welcome everyone to another Heart to Heart talk show where we discuss issues of faith, fun, family, finances, and health. Birth in the pandemic. For those who are with us for the first time, amen, we welcome you from whatever country or region you're coming from. If you can, on Facebook, on YouTube, and also on Zoom, just begin to type where you're coming from, maybe your country, or you can type perhaps you're from a real estate company, wherever you're from. We just want to have you feel it welcome, whatever parish you're from. Amen. Just type it in. This is a Christian heart-to-heart talk show, Christian-based production. And so we seek to honor the Lord Jesus Christ in everything we do because he has given us the power to create wealth. Wealth is a creative process. Wealth, true wealth, is a creative process. Yes, amen. I'm seeing Coldwell Banker Realty, Cheryl Lim coming in. All right, so let's just bow our heads as we invite the presence of the Lord. Lord, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for sustaining grace. Even in a time of pandemic, Lord God, many of us have not been touched by this, and for this we give you thanks. And for those that have been affected by it, Lord, we pray for grace. We pray for healing. We pray for the coping mechanisms that the hand of the Lord would reach down and touch the minds of children and parents and workers, everybody that has been affected, even financially, by this. We pray that out of this, the glory of the Lord will still be revealed, that men would know that you're still Lord. Cover tonight, in this afternoon, this program, and let everything be done decently and in order. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Praise God. Amen. I want to thank you for coming in. Let me check on YouTube. All right. I see a growing audience on YouTube. And there's a growing audience on Facebook as well. Yes, begin to type. Everyone who just came in, begin to type where you're coming from, your parish or your company or whatever it is. Let me welcome also my co-hosts. Amen. My co-host with me, Mr. Christopher Moffat. Amen. Welcome, Christopher Moffat. Yes, as he begins to unmute himself. Mr. Moffat is a senior estate officer at the Urban Development Corporation. He's not here representing UDC. He's here in his personal capacity. All right. Welcome, Christopher.
Yeah, man. It's great being here. Great that I can join the panels.
Yes. And you see behind Christopher, you see that banner mixing with the Moffats. Folks, if you need some mental relief, if you need some de-stressor, please, right now, subscribe on YouTube to Mixing with the Moffats. He and his wife, they're crazy good. Go and look at the Hot Pepper Challenge. And if you want to do your own Hot Pepper Challenge, you can follow them. But it's great mental relief. We need as much reason to laugh as possible. Welcome, Sharon Brown Roberts from Saint Martin. Is that how you pronounce it? Saint Martin, that's in the Caribbean island. So mixing with the Moffats. Yes, so Chris is going to vibe with me. He knows more about the real estate thing. I know nothing about it. I'm just here for the entertainment and the fun. Kidding. I'm here really for empowerment as well, to ensure that you are empowered. As a trained journalist, our duty is to mediate communication. Those of you are familiar with that body of work, the late Professor Agri Brown, we just simply mediate, get the facts out. So we have some very important guests with us. Chris, who do we have? We have Andrew
Williamson. Andrew Miller.
Yes, Andrew and Rochelle Miller, husband and wife power team.
Yes, man. Our one and only Jermaine Williamson. I don't think I find anybody else as unique as Jermaine.
DJ Will.
A man of many hats.
Oh, Lord.
And Dr. Beale.
Yes, Dr. Tina Beale. Yes, we'll properly introduce them in a bit. And we have also coming in Nicole Gordon in a short while, attorney at law. But Chris, before we introduce everyone, tell us the real estate market. I'm seeing all kind of stuff going up in Kingston. This is the Jamaica Real Estate Expo, so we want to contextualize it to Jamaica.
Yeah.
But in the pandemic, I'm seeing all kind of stuff going up, and I'm driving by like, who is paying
Like,
for this?
is there actually a pandemic going on? I'm actually wondering, but it seems like the real estate market is the residential real estate market is still going strong, especially apartment high intensity developments. I can say that they're still having the demand, constant. I can tell you that on other aspects of the market, you might see like the resort area of the market, you will find a drop in that aspect of it. But the residential market is booming. Still, I don't see any holding up right now. I mean, I await the panelists to challenge me on that one. But
I,
if
I want to
there's
know,
any
Chris,
challenges,
where is the money coming from? I mean, like some
well,
of these things are 20 odd million for a 1 bedroom apartment. Where is the money coming from?
why? I guess we have means of getting money now. People, I mean, the NHT increase in benefits and money that they give persons. You have other financial institutions competing with each other right now, and basically trying to out bargain, each other for clients. So you find that you will have a lot of options now to get money to purchase something,
Yeah.
So you're still gonna find once those options are there, definitely find persons still demanding until those options are null and void.
Yeah.
But
So which one are you
I
going for? Which one of those very expensive high-end apartments you're going for?
well, I honestly I have already purchased a regular one, middle income one, but I think the next thing I'm gonna do is build. That is the next thing I'm doing,
Yes,
building.
yes, yes, yes. And
Right.
we,
So if you can manage the well, I don't know if it's stress, but if you can manage the building or the management of a site aspect and all the things that the challenges that come with it, I have no problem with a man building to his specifications. You understand?
yeah.
But that is where I am going next. And
Yeah,
I think
I've wanted to put myself in that frame of mind to build for a number of years. It's daunting. It's a daunting thing, but that's something we want to explore maybe in the panel discussion to build or to buy.
yeah, we need to know which one is the better option. Persons might want to know as
Yeah, yeah,
if they can just buy, if they can afford a little land for a little money and take them time build on it, or
yeah.
them just buy a middle income unit. Which one is the best? Which one is best to do
Yes,
at this
yes,
moment, in this time,
yes.
in this climate? Yeah.
I see Tajira Thompson posting already to build. She's the owner of Peculiar Pieces. Folks, you can go on Instagram. Trust me, ladies, you like to wear those sandals. Trust me, you need to go to Instagram and look for Peculiar Pieces. Some awesome sandals designed by Tajira Thompson. Some of them very Jamaican. Some of them, but trust me, first world in terms of design. So go on Instagram, search for Peculiar Pieces. Also, my friend Sophia Terrelong, search for her, Sophia for Christ, on YouTube. You can add her. Powerful program she has on YouTube. She has a PhD in economics. We did a program the other day, and she left the formal sector and is working in the virtual space using the Upwork.com website. All right. On that program, we found out you can earn between 147,000 Jamaican dollars to 500 and odd thousand Jamaican, depending on what you're doing per month, just working, taking on projects online. So you can really just work from home, literally, officially. So, Chris, those are other opportunities that are out there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people can plug into those things and buy these apartments that we see around.
She said that NHC says it's cheaper to build. Let us hear what the panelists have to say.
Yes. Let me introduce them. Rochelle Channel Miller, PhD student, Urban and Regional Planning, Florida State University, real estate dealer in Jamaica, valuations property management, senior lecturer on study leave, real estate management and valuation of the real estate and planning division at UTech. She has a BSc in land economy and valuation surveying, first class honors. UTech, that was awarded in 2011. She has a certificate in supervisory management with distinction, and she has been to the Management Institute for National Development. She has a master's in real estate and property management distinction, University of Salford, UK, and she is married to Andrew Miller, the power couple, and he has a master's in student agribusiness. Well, he's pursuing his master's in student agribusiness at the Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. He's a real estate dealer, specializing in valuations, property management, sales, rentals, auctioneering, and leases. He is a valuation surveyor with the Channel Miller and Associates Property Services, and he has a Bachelor in Sciences, Bachelor of Sciences in Land Economy and Valuation Surveying with honors. These are bright folks, and they have partnered with Dr. Tina Beale, and they're going to be a team presenting one after the other. They're going to take over that section. They're really my co-producers for this vision, and she is the program leader and lecturer in real estate management and valuation. That's the real estate and planning division, UTech. She has a Bachelor of Sciences in Land Economy and Valuation Surveying, first class honors, Masters in the Built Environment, Masters in Real Estate Property Management, PhD in Real Estate and Planning, University of Reading, UK. These are bright people who have mastered and doctored the real estate industry. So all your questions will be answered today, and I will introduce the rest of the panel at the appropriate time for their various presentations. So let me welcome the Millers to come on in and to take over. This has been a long time in coming. Rochelle and Andrew, we have tried to give birth to this for a couple of months now. I believe it's 9 months, maybe. So it's quite appropriate.
Yes, it's well developed.
Thank you very much.
So you're all going to take over and give your presentation for the next few minutes, and then I believe Dr. Beale will come in to talk also about property taxes. So over to you.
So she'll be a part of our presentation.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. It's really good for us to be here. Talking about something that we're really passionate about. As you can see, we have really gone into real estate, and as Brother Tyrell says, we have doctored it or mastered it or trying to doctor it and master it because it's something that we're passionate about. So today we just want to talk to you about the state of real estate in Jamaica. As you can imagine, there are a lot of things that we could say today, and because we talk about it so much, there are a lot of things that we thought about, but we just wanted to put some things forward in our short time, and just cover a few things that we've been thinking about. We have not covered commercial real estate or most of the other sectors because of time constraints, but there are definitely things that we may have opinions on should we want to have a second show, Brother Morgan. So today, myself and Dr. Beale and my husband, Andrew Miller, will be working together on this. We're looking at four main areas. We're looking at land and home ownership in Jamaica, just giving a context to all of that. We're looking at property taxes. We'll look at the current market, especially as we're thinking about the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic, and then just a little snippet on how to prepare for land and home ownership. All right, so just looking at the context, a lot of the things that affect us in Jamaica, it can be connected to our colonial retentions. So most of what we're studying when we're Dr. Beale and myself, for example, it's all bringing us back to looking at colonialism and the things that we have retained from colonialism. And the interesting thing about that is that in addition to the systems that we have in place coming from our period under British rule, a lot of our colonial retentions are showing themselves in our cultural expectations and beliefs, and some of the norms that we have, and those relating to land are rooted in a lot of these things. So if we look at the ways in which colonialism has affected how we relate to land in Jamaica, we can think about the multiple forms of ownership that exist in Jamaica. So we have formal title. Most of us know about that title, that you have your volume and folio, and the official title that you can get benefits, access to credit, and in some ways other responsibilities come with that. Then you have deeds that you register to show that you have an interest in land. It's not always guaranteed that you can access credit that way, but in some cases you can access credit through the PC bank. So a lot of the agricultural persons use those informal or not less formal approaches to ownership to access credit and so on. Then we have informal land. When we think about that, we think about family land that may have a title, but different persons living on the land together, and they don't have their individual title. Now we can think about squatting. And the retention now in the norms is that a lot of us have a bit of confusion as to what really documents ownership. And I don't want to get into a lot of that because we have the lawyer here, Ms. Gordon. But many of us, when we're as valuers, people will show us a survey diagram. They'll show us a title, they'll show us an indenture form, they'll show us a tax paper, they show us a little notebook that grandpa did leave from 19 whenever that said this piece is for you, this piece is for you. And most of us have a little confusion as to what is the proper way to document and what really shows that we own land in Jamaica. And a lot of that is stemming from our colonial past. And that leads us now to think about the laws themselves. I'll ask Dr. Beale to go into this.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. Nice to be here. In terms of our laws, so just before I go into property tax, it's important for me to first give a little preamble to lead, well, to go seamlessly into why it is we normally have low compliance in Jamaica. So two of the main acts that basically govern the property tax is the Property Tax Act itself, as well as the Land Valuation Act. Now, the Property Tax Act basically says that a person in possession, basically somebody occupying or living on the land, is liable to pay the tax. However, in the Land Valuation Act, we have two key definitions set out in Section 2. It tells us who is an owner, and that's essentially somebody who owns a land formally through title or by deed, or someone who has gained ownership through adverse possession or has a possessory title. Now, the Act also defines a person in possession, and essentially defines a person in possession as someone who is the owner or an agent of the owner, or someone who is physically occupying the land. Now, when you think about both definitions, two things can emerge from that. The first is that an owner is a person in possession. However, it's also saying that not all persons in possession are owners. If we then go a little further into the Act in Section 17, and we look at how it is the valuation rule should be set up, it indicates to us that it's the owner that's recorded on the valuation rule. And it doesn't state whether or not a person in possession should be recorded on the rule. So essentially what that is implying then is that it's up to tax administration to more or less determine the types of persons in possession that can be placed on the valuation rule. No, that is a bit ambiguous because the law is silent on it. And that in and of itself goes straight into why it is enforcement is weak. Because if it is that we don't have a record of all the different types of persons who are occupying these lands, then where it is, for example, an owner is deceased, but their family member is living on the land, then it becomes difficult for tax administrators to enforce against those individuals since there's no record of who is actually living on the land in such cases. And a lot of the lands in Jamaica, we find that it's a family land situation. Now, what are the other reasons why compliance is low in Jamaica? We have a rural-urban divide. Now, the rural-urban divide in Jamaica is kind of topsy-turvy, I would say, in the sense that, yes, there's a clear distinction between properties in terms of the values in rural areas as opposed to urban areas. But the interesting thing is that in Jamaica, some parts of rural Jamaica, the land values are actually quite much higher than those in the urban area, simply because a lot of the lands in rural Jamaica, some of them were old colonial estates. They have not been subdivided. And so as a result of they being large tracts of lands, like for instance, close to 1,000 acres, there are quite a few of them, their land values are extremely high, sometimes as much as 30 times higher than the value of a standard house or quarter-acre lot in, say, for instance, Kingston and St. Andrew. Now, coupled with that, we then have high levels of squatting. The Ministry of Housing at the time in 2017 had estimated that about 40% of the Jamaican population is basically squatting. Now, added to that, if you overlay that situation with the rural-urban divide, what you see is that we have a lot of squatters who are living on the most valuable lands in Jamaica. So whereas those plots, those large plots may probably just represent 20% of the number of parcels in the country, what we're finding is that the persons who are living on that 20%, right, they're living on the most valuable lands. And when it is now, they're not paying the tax or there's no payment coming forward for those parcels, you would see where ordinarily a group of or parcels of land could actually have a compliance rate of say 70%, 80%. But when you actually add those into the mix, you see compliance drop as low as 30%, 20%. And added to that situation, we have many players, many persons in the market who have incomplete knowledge. There's a vast amount of information asymmetry between persons who are owners, who occupy land, and those who may have expertise in real estate matters. And the biggest thing that they're uncertain about or don't have knowledge about, which Mrs. Miller basically referred to earlier, how it is that they can go about formally registering the land, what are the laws governing land. There's even some confusion as it relates to who should actually pay the tax in the case of family land issues and all of that. So when we combine those four things, those are the four major things that's really causing Jamaica to have a low compliance rate as it relates to property tax. Now, how can you actually go about checking your property tax? First of all, you can go on the National Land Agency's website at nla.gov.jm at IMAP Jamaica, and you can basically do a parcel search or some investigative work in relation to your parcel. You can enter your address. Upon entering your address, you can then find out what's the valuation rule number or the parcel ID number. With that parcel ID number, you can then go to the property tax query portal that's set up by Tax Administration Jamaica, where you then enter the valuation rule number, click submit, and you will then see the payment record associated with the parcel you're occupying for the last 7 years. If it is persons have a challenge in terms of doing that on the internet, then you can simply go to the tax office that is closest to you. How do you actually go about calculating your property tax? Now, currently, since 2017, the government had gone ahead and developed this 9-tier graduated tax scale. And essentially, it starts out at a flat rate of 1,000. And progressively, you pay rates at 0.5%, going all the way down to 0.9%, depending on the value of your property. So let's take, for example, the value of your land is $1 million. Essentially, how you would go about calculating your tax bill. So for the first 400,000 as indicated on the scale, you would pay a flat rate or a flat amount of $1,000. Then for the next $400,001 to $800,000, which essentially is a difference of $399,000, you would apply the rate of 0.5%, which is 0.005 in decimal format. which gives you an amount of $1,999, just under $2,000. Then taking you up to the $800,001, sorry, to the million. That's a difference of just under 200,000. You apply that to the rate of 0.55%, which is 0.0055 in decimal format. So you're just paying under 1,100. So we would add up all three components to give us a total of $4,099.99. Now, additional tips. First of all, there's a quote unquote 7-year rule that's it's termed as colloquially, which means that after 7 years have passed, a person cannot be held liable for tax arrears. However, the local authorities are quick to point out that if prior to that 7-year threshold or timeline, they have been actually trying to collect the taxes from you, then they can actually still collect it even after 7 years have passed. It's important for us to note that only owners can apply for exemptions. And I mean, it's logical based on the fact that the Act only states specifically that an owner is the person to be placed on the roll. Now, what properties are eligible for exemptions? Churches. And it's important for me to point out that as it relates to churches, it's only the building that is used for worship. So if it's a property that is owned by a church, but it's not being used for praise and worship, then that would not be eligible for an exemption. So schools, as well as all government properties, hospitals, lands owned by the Council of Legal Education. So more tips. Again, only owners can object to the value that they receive in their valuation notice. Now, there are 4 grounds upon which someone can file for an objection. If it is you think the value is too high or too low, if it is lands that should be valued as one parcel has been valued separately, or lands that have been valued separately has been valued as one. And in relation to those 2 items, just to point out that in section 13 right, of the Act, the Land Valuation Act, is basically saying that if it is you are an owner of adjoining properties and they have been put to separate uses, or you have rented them to separate individuals, the commissioner has the power to value them separately. If it is, for instance, you have a property where it's really just one property, but it has been severed or divided by a road or some river, then it should be valued as one. And if it is your property, let's say, falls between the border of 2 parishes, they're to value it as one, but then the payment of the taxes are portioned to each of the collectorates that each part would be basically associated with. And lastly, if it is that the person who is named as the owner on your tax bill is not the actual owner.
Thanks, Dr. Beale. So that gives us a context to understand some of the struggles that we're having with property now in Jamaica, and then how to understand and react to the current state of the market.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
All right, the current real estate market.
Go look at the house.
What is a real estate market? Maybe the first question you might ask. This is a transaction related to ownership of rights to property. It's not a marketplace, as you know, but it's one in theory. So it is influenced by several other factors, as with other markets. They have things such as interest rates, economic conditions, consumer confidence, among others, that will affect a real estate market. When we mention real estate market, there are basically 2 components that stand out. We have what is termed as a buyer's market. This is where the supply of homes for sale is high when compared to the number of buyers in the market. So in a buyer's market, there are more homes or properties for sale than persons interested in buying. So here is a situation where we have the supply of properties is higher than the demand for the properties. The buyer's market, there are certain characteristics that comes with a buyer's market. All right. In a buyer's market, house prices tend to be lower because of the increased supply, because as we know, price is a determinant of demand and supply. So when we have a case where the supply is larger or greater, we have a lower pricing. There tend to be longer exposure time in a buyer's market, in that properties tend to sit on the market longer before an offer is made on them. Another interesting characteristic of a buyer's market also is that more competition in the marketplace between sellers. So in a buyer's market, you have a seller who will try to pad their property. So they'll tell you that they can knock off an extra 200,000, or they will throw in a TV, for instance, ACR2, just to get you interested in the property. So that is one of the characteristics of a buyer's market. So buyer's market also, there are more choices and more leverage to negotiate. So when you're in a buyer's market, the buyer has the power. So you can, in essence, tell the potential seller that I'm going home to think about it without fear that the property will be gone. So there's more leverage when it comes down to a buyer's market. On the other hand, where we have a seller's market, this is a situation where the supply of homes for sale is low when compared to the number of buyers in the market. So in essence, what happens is that the demand for property is higher than the supply available. So unlike in a buyer's market, it is a case now where supply is limited. So when supply is limited, housing prices tend to be higher. Again, coming from the concept of demand and supply. Also of note is the fact that you have shorter sale times. So you'll see a property come on the market and within a couple of days it's off, because there are a lot more potential buyers out there. And there seems, in a seller's market, there's competition. Unlike with a buyer's market, competition between potential buyers now. So what you will have is that because supply of properties is limited and many persons come in competing for the limited supply, you'll have persons now going above listing prices. So persons will offer above the price that property is listed at in order to secure the property. So these bidding wars that will normally come in place where a seller's market is in focus will lead to higher prices. So these are, in essence, the best time for a person to sell. So let's now look at what is on the lips of everybody, a pandemic. Well, for all of us on here, I'm sure, we have not lived through anything the magnitude of what we're seeing here. So a pandemic is just like with many other things, the things that they can offer shocks to our market or affect an economy. And the real estate market is not independent of a country's economy. So what you find when you have things such as pandemics, typically, and things such as recession, and note I use the word typically, you'd expect to see increased foreclosures. You expect to see flat or even declining property values. You'd expect to see lower volumes of property sales and properties being on the market longer. Also, you expect to see a tightening of lending requirements by financial institutions. This is main reason for this is coming because of uncertainty in the market, because a real estate decision is one that is must be made with a lot of certainty, because if you're undertaking a mortgage, you must have a secure income that comes what may you be able to pay for that mortgage. So when we have things such as pandemics and recession, these are some things that we'll expect to see typically in a market such as this. And if I should add, just recently an article published in the Observer, it quoted the current president of the RSJ saying that now is the time to purchase real estate. And he referenced the fact that current interest rates are actually at all-time lows. So even though there's a pandemic, we have low interest rates going on now, as was quoted by the current president of the RSJ. I'll now hand over to Mrs. Miller.
Thank you. So low interest rates, partly because of interventions, and even from the US perspective, I think the interest rates here too have been at an all-time low because of the federal government's intervention in the market. So you're looking at, should I borrow now or not? Should I delay? Because really it's a big decision to decide to buy a home. And as we said earlier, we're looking at residential, not commercial. I see some messages in the chat, because commercial is another totally different kettle of fish to think about now. But from a home ownership perspective, we're thinking now, okay, we're in a pandemic. Should I do something now? And I think I saw a comment earlier that says that if you had made provisions for it, it might be a good time to. But what we want to talk about then, what are some of the considerations you should put in place or think about before you even think about going into home ownership or land ownership? So we're looking at affordability, which is obvious. And affordability is not, can I make the payments every month? You want to be looking at, can you comfortably make these payments? And I'll use an example to show you. We're looking at financial preparedness. So it's not just when you go on your RAG or you go on a website and you see the listing price at whatever, that you just need to be able to qualify for this price and that's it. No, there are a lot of costs that go into it. I won't go into all the costs because I think Mr. Williamson and Ms. Gordon will be going into that in detail, but there are a lot of costs to consider in making a decision to purchase a piece of property or a house. And we want to look at it from an investment perspective. So most of us here from the valuation profession, we have done land economy and valuation survey. So we're looking at the economics of land and basically, should we be putting money into this or that? Can we find another investment that is giving you a better return? And I think the culture in Jamaica is that we look at home ownership not necessarily from an investment perspective. We're not calculating the figures all the time. We're looking at, oh, we'll have a house, or we'll stop paying rent and not doing the further calculations. So I thought about a practical example. I'm thinking about a couple that one person might be earning 2.5 million gross per year and the other may be earning 2 million per year. And I know that's not necessarily real figure, because based on what I've researched, the median incomes are a bit lower than that. So just for our example, so we're saying that these persons have a monthly disposable income of $281,000. That's after averaging taxes and deductions at about 25%. So we're looking now, what can they buy? So we're saying that these persons work in the corporate area. We're not looking at rural area today, and we don't have enough time to do it. But we're looking at something, went on MLS, we found something in Bridgeport for about 13 million. We know of an Eltham Acres coming on the market shortly, and they're gonna list for 13. And then we saw a Corville apartment for about 12 million. So we're saying, okay, you have NHT benefits, both persons have NHT benefits. You're a public sector worker, so the interest rate that you're gonna get is 3%. You're young, so you're 30, 32, 35, you get about 30 years on your mortgage. What kind of payment will you be making? And can you afford this, right? So we're looking at a scenario where that deposit of $1.3 million, you don't have it up front. So you need to borrow that from an unsecured loan facility. So you're gonna have a payment at about $30,000 per month for 5 years. Your mortgage payment is fairly affordable, $49,000 a month. We're averaging property taxes across monthly property taxes are fairly low for something like that. And we're estimating that if it's an older house, you might do some repairs, maybe $2,000 worth of repairs every month. I know that if you're gonna paint and if it's an older house, it's way more than that. And then I'm lumping in their housing related expenses for utilities, so like light and water. So we're coming out at $92,000, so your housing expenses. And I'm averaging and saying, okay, this couple have only $15,000 worth of debt. So they don't have any student loans, or if they have student loans, they've brought it down to $15,000 for both of them. They're only carrying $30,000 every month on their credit card. So they only use that, I guess, for gas. And they're not valuers who pay for a lot more gas than that. They only have one car, so their car loan is $40,000. And we're looking at now affordability. Can they comfortably afford this? the global standards for affordability relating to housing is that your housing expenses should be 30% or less of your income. And we're looking at this couple that is fairly well off. They're right above affordability, 33%. So it's not necessarily affordable. We have not put in children. We have not put in the other things that come with growing up, adulting as we call it. And then we're looking at the total obligations now. So the obligations, sorry about that. Both of us are here with our son, so sorry about that. So the total obligations in terms of your financial indebtedness is about 60-something%. And ideally, you'd want your total debt obligations to be at 40%. So when we're looking at being ready for home ownership, you want to think about the cost and put things in place. So when I run this example where you don't have to borrow that deposit, you have that deposit cash, you are saving, you throw your partner, you put it up, it changes the scenario totally. Your expenses ratio drops to 22%. So it's more affordable. It's still, your personal debt obligation is not ideal, but it's still a little bit better because now you know that if something like a pandemic happens that threatens your health, you may have to stop working for a bit. It threatens your job. You have a little cushion. The other thing we're looking at is this a worthwhile investment? Now I could go into way more calculations. I'm not gonna go into that today. I'm just showing you that NHT is giving us 3%. But when you think about the closing cost, and I think Mr. Williamson will go into that, the loan that you're borrowing is not just the amount that they're going to give you, that 11.7. You have to put in the money that you're going to put into it. And I don't have the deposit calculated here. You're putting in these other costs. So the effective cost of borrowing this money is not 3%, it's actually 4% if you think about it. If we scale up this example and think about doing a loan not through NHT, the current rates are at about 8%. So your mortgage payment, a full loan for that $30 million house from like VM, the payment is going to be about $85,000, not using an NHT benefit. But when you put in these closing costs, your actual rate, the cost to you is about 9%, not 8%. So we want you to think about, is it a worthwhile investment? And you might ask me, okay, not a worthwhile investment. Does that mean that I should only rent? And I'm saying that there are times when it might be better to rent than to buy. You have that lump sum, that $1.3 million put down, waiting. It might be possible for you to get a better return than 3%, than 2%, than 1%. Save that money, get more prepared, especially when you're younger, you're just starting a career, you have not reached your income that you'll be able to command for the next 10 years or whatever. Wait a little. You may have some other goals. You may have a new family. You don't know what you're going to do with your children. You don't know which school you're going to send them to. You don't know if you'll become a manager and then you'll need to be at work more often, or you'll have more carrying costs and so on. So it's okay to push against our culture and not buy as soon as you get married or buy as soon as you have a better job, but think about it in terms of the financial expectations and the things that you're going to put on yourself to do that. Then we're talking about building on your own land. That's normally, it has its benefits and it has some detractions. It's a cheaper loan to carry. You can build as you afford. But then the fact is that if you're this couple in the urban area, it's hard to find land to build that. And if you're going to go to the rural areas, the job prospects to get you that income that you need, they're not there. And then you have your initial overheads that you have to think about. And then counting the costs. You might go, all right, I'm not going to buy land. I'm going to build on a piece of land that my husband, mother give to him. They're going to build beside your family members. You have to think about this unregistered land. If I need to take a loan out in the future, can I do it or not? This family land, if there are any disturbances in the family, what would be the implications of that? What about in-law relationships? Some of us we're not realistic. If something happens, if your spouse dies and you have your house on this family land that is not sorted out yet, you have put in 2 million, 3 million, 4 million on it. What will happen if something disturbs that relationship? And then the implications of being highly leveraged, even from a buying the house perspective. A lot of persons have a house, but they are very stressed. They don't have any wiggle room for anything to happen. They're house rich, but cash poor. We don't want that. And we're coming from a Christian perspective now when we're talking about stewardship of resources. God has given you resources. You have to count the cost before putting it in one space. Think about it. Is this the best use of my money at this point in time? Am I being susceptible to certain shocks or not? And how can I pad myself from that? So we want you to think about these things, and then going forward now, when you're looking on the market, when you're making your decisions, as Mr. Williamson will tell you, all of the other things to do, but just to consider preparing for home ownership. There are a lot to consider. We can help you do the calculations. We can help you out with all of those things. You can actually talk to us afterwards. Thank you.
Yes. Wow. Chock full of information right there.
I'm not sure we're hearing you properly, but informative. Mr. and Miss Miller. Mr. and Mrs. Miller. It was very informative. As well as Miss Beale.
Indeed.
I really appreciate those numbers. I know he has a number person from a long time, you know. Coming from way back, man. Way back. But it was very informative. The building on own land aspect of it, you know, it kind of answer what we had started out with initially. You know, but we hope that Mr. Williamson can come and clear up some stuff, you know, some additional stuff that we're looking forward to, man. But remember, I also want to put this in. Property taxes, it's very important. It's due April 1, right? And, you know, you guys have up to April the 30th. But, yeah, man, but it's very important to know this, you know, the economy has to survive.
Yes. Is that a little better?
Yes, it's so much better, Mr. Marlon.
Yes. So some bombs were dropped, and I believe a lot of folks were checked in their path.
Yes, man.
You're gone again, Tira.
We want to get down in some of the things that are there. But Christopher, you have the pleasure of introducing Senior Valuer Realtor at Victoria Mutual Building Society, Mr. Jermaine Williams. I know you know him a little bit more, to talk to us about him. Amen.
Well, Jermaine Williamson, we go way back, you know, even before we started working together at Victoria Mutual. You know, we in fact, my significant other knew him before me. to our friend. So we met up back at Victoria Mutual, and you know, from there on, we have been great friends. We share the same passion, and I can tell you, this gentleman is a go-getter, and as I said to everybody initially, somebody that wears a lot of hats, but I'm not going to get into the other hats.
Yeah.
But he's a very promising young man, and I'm sure that he's going to shed some light on the real estate market and the brokerage. So
yes, and he's my former neighbor as well. Let's drop that in. And I want to baptize him in Jesus' name one day. So he can play gospel music for Jesus.
Amen.
It's a pleasure to be here. And you know, I could not turn down the invitation when Tyrell reached out to me and said I needed to shed some light on the state of the real estate market in Jamaica. I have a passion for knowledge sharing. It's only fitting that my presentation comes right after Rochelle and Andrew's presentation, because you know I learned a lot from that, and I've been taking notes. I hope everybody out there in virtual space, you know, they are taking notes as well, because you know there's not many occasions when you get to have this abundance of information being thrown out at you. So my first bite of the cherry today would be talking about common pitfalls in the sale process. So let me bring this presentation up. All right, and just like the presenter before me, we're going to look at it from the vendor's perspective and also the purchaser's perspective. So we're starting out with the vendors, right? And you're thinking about selling your property. One of the first things you'd like to do is to be able to identify the location of your title. It is a pain to reach all the way down the wicket. And I'm using this example of cricket. If you're familiar with that sport, I think it's probably still the leading sporting activity for the Caribbean. But you're all the way down the middle of the wicket, and then boom, you cannot find the title for the property. And Miss Gordon will explain how painful that is as we go along in this show. Selling without seeking professional opinion, I always advise my clients to at least speak to a valuer. You may find yourself in a situation where you have overpriced or underpriced the property, and if you overprice it, you will find out. You will know it's overpriced because the market will react to that price. However, if you underprice the property, you won't know until the property is gone, and then you will have yourself to beat. Modifying or extending the original structure without securing the relevant approvals in violation of the restrictive covenants. This is also a major problem in the transfer in the real estate process, transferring from one person to the next. The bank will not issue a mortgage on a property that has a breach of covenant, right? So that must be remedied or modified. Ms. Gordon again may speak to you about the process of modification of covenant. That's a long and expensive process. Most times it's best to just knock off the breach if it is practical, but that can affect the value of the property. So for example, you may be selling the house for 10 million and you have to knock off the garage, then you cannot expect to get $10 million for that property. And you will not net 10 million, because as we go along in this presentation, you will see the cost that will be coming out of your money. And to reduce the price further, you will be in a very disadvantaged position. Not reading the sale agreement or being guided through the sale agreement with your attorney. So this is important. You want to know what you're signing. Anything you're signing, just please be cognizant of what you're signing. And it's nice to have that question and answer session with your attorney to understand that, yeah, man, we're on the right track and such. We have all confidence in our attorneys, but you must first have confidence in yourself. Taking too long to respond to prospects. So you're putting this property on the market and people have been responding and such, and you're indecisive. You don't know, you're not sure, you're taking long to get back. Probably by the time you get around, that person is gone. And Andrew spoke about buyers and sellers market. So if you're having a seller's market, you don't want to be delayed. You want to move as quickly as possible. But this is a major deterrent factor, and you want to be decisive. Sometimes we have this emotional connection or some other connection with the property. As Tyrell has pointed out earlier, that we were previous neighbors. I had that problem as well, but I got over it. Just make a video and watch it and say bye-bye. And then now, not clearing outstanding balances on your NWC account or bringing your, I should have right here, your property taxes up to date. So these expenses runs with the land, and Miss Gordon, again, I'm giving Miss Gordon a whole heap of work. Hope she's taking notes. She will explain to you why it's important to clear your water balance and keep your property tax account current when you're selling your property. All right, so we're going to move over from the vendor now, and we're going to look at the purchaser. And these are some of the pitfalls the purchaser must or try as best as possible to avoid. Not organizing your financial affairs prior to the commencement of house hunting. We usually start out by saying, okay, let's get your pre-qualification done. This is a very important document if you're seeking mortgage financing to purchase a property. It's important because in submitting an offer, that offer, you must demonstrate your ability to complete the purchase. And the easiest form of demonstrating that ability is to put forward a pre-qualification letter or eligibility letter. Some people better know it as from NHT. So NHT will give you an eligibility letter, and the banks will call it a pre-qualification letter. Please do not mix up pre-qualification and pre-approval. They are two different processes, right? Pre-qualification is like on the surface of things. You provide some information to the lending institution. They look at your financial affairs, your responsibility, your liabilities and all, and then they say, based on what you have put forward, I think you can manage a loan of this amount and your monthly payment will be X. Pre-approval now is further in the process when you have actually done the mortgage application, which you'll get a list of stuff that you need to submit to the mortgage institution, and then you will get a pre-approval at that stage. I think we'll have to do a whole presentation on that part, but that would not fit into the 10 minutes that I get for this initial presentation. So you want to get your finances in order from the outset. Do not take any additional new loans after you have been pre-approved, because you would have been pre-approved based on a set of factors, right? And if you start manipulating those factors, taking a new credit card, taking a new car loan, when you get around to doing your mortgage application now, and they reassess your financial situation, you're probably not qualified for the loan amount that you were previously told in the pre-qualification letter. So please just be calm once you're in the house hunting phase and focus on that house. Don't think about the new car or the nice stuff that you'd want to buy on the credit card and such. Just remain. Try to keep your ship as steady as possible. Taking too long to submit an offer. So I draw back to Andrew's presentation. When you have a buyer's market, when you have a seller's market, so there's more buyer in the market space than property being sold. You cannot, every second matters. You want to make the first call when that property is advertised. You want to be the first person to view that property. You want to be the first person to put in an offer. So taking too long when you have a buyer's market is not a good idea. And Andrew spoke about buyers and sellers market, and I don't want people to have this as a general concept, because this is specific to location and property type. So you may have a buyer's market in St. Catherine. You may have a buyer's market, have a seller's market in St. Catherine. It depends on the location and the property type. All right? So submitting an offer without professional guidance. Boy, Andrew, I keep drawing from your presentation. I'm happy I was present and taking notes. Submitting an offer in a buyer's market, people are sometimes inclined to go over the asking price. You must be very cautious with this. Very, very cautious, because the lending institution will be giving you the loan on the purchase price or the valuation, the lower of the two. Remember that part, the lower of the two. So if there's a difference in the valuation and the purchase price, you will have to come out of pocket, and that can be a pain. Closing costs is a pain, not to mention to foot the difference between the valuation and the selling price. So be careful of that. Submitting an offer, well, this is what we spoke about, submitting an offer above the market value, not planning for closing costs. So it is important in general to save. But conveniently, NHT has been helping out people with closing costs. They have a CRTD loan, that is contribution refund to deposit, that can be used to eliminate some of those closing cost expenses, right? So apart from your savings, if you're an NHE contributor, you can apply to them for this loan. And what the CRTD loan is actually is giving you your contribution, annual contributions in a lump sum to put towards expenses that are associated with a sale. Please be reminded now, if you're somebody like me that looks forward every January to your NHT refund, if you apply for this facility and you're approved and you get it, you won't be getting any refund for some time. So you can start looking 8 years in the future to start collecting refund again. All right, and sometimes that refund comes in very handy. You know, pay the little car insurance, start the year good and thing. Yes, it's very nice. It's very nice. So I'm not reading the sale agreement again or being guided through the sale agreement with your attorney. This is a very important aspect of the sale process. You need to inform yourself, right? And have your attorney inform you as well. And you should keep close contact with your realtor through all of this, because we are very knowledgeable of what's happening here. So I'm going to run through some of the costs that are included in the sale process, and we're going to do the same flow from vendor to purchaser. So you have transfer tax, which is 2%, right? And people always say 2% of the sale price. But I'm going to put a spin right here. It's 2% of the market value, because the stamp office sometimes assess that property if they are not convinced that the market price is accurate. So people in the marketplace will try to control their expense by sometimes under declaring the value of the property and such and so. So the stamp office has the right to go back and look at that property, assess the value, and charge you 2% on that figure. So it can be more than your market, more than the selling price. So there's a flat fee of 5,000 for stamp duty. This came into effect in April 1, 2019, and this was welcomed. This stamp duty figure has sparked serious competition in the marketplace, in the real estate market, and this, I think, is one of the main factors for lowering interest rate, because stamp duty. Ms. Gordon again will explain why all documents, legal documents, need to be stamped. So now that you only have to pay $2,005 to move not only $2,005, but one of the expenses is associated with moving a mortgage from one institution to the next is now $2,005 versus a percentage of the value of the loan previously. It's easier to move from one lending institution to a next. So we are seeing now in the marketplace a lot of refinancing going on. So it's a very tight competition out there. And this is one of the reasons why interest rates are low right now. So you have a title registration fee, which is 0.25% of the selling price. And then you have your attorney fees. And Ms. Gordon again will speak to you about the attorney fees. I just put a range right here of 2% to 5%. Please take up that with the attorney. And of course of the carriage of sale or preparation of sale agreement. And then this is where we get paid, the realtor's fee of 5%. I put it last, but it doesn't mean it is least important. Please, it's very important to the survival of realtors. And then now we move over to the purchasers. So you would see the stamp duty here, $2,500, which is half of the $5,000 we spoke about earlier. The title registration fee, the attorney fees again. It is important. I've seen, and there tends to be this practice in Jamaica where some people say, oh, let's use the same attorney. I always encourage my clients to have their own attorney. Don't bother with the same attorney thing, because your attorney should be looking out for your best interests. And if there's a conflict in that sale process, which there can be many conflicts, you want to know that your attorney is looking out for your best interests and not playing that mediator role or finding the best way to balance this side and that side. So get your own attorney. Even if you're thinking about the cost savings and such, get your own attorney. Then you have the valuation cost if you're taking a loan. This is because if you're doing a cash purchase, you don't necessarily have to do a valuation. It is important to do a valuation because you want to ensure that you're not overpaying or underpaying is good, But if you're underpaying, you can calculate equity that you're automatically getting in this property from the outset. So evaluation is very important. Yeah, the surveyor's ID report, which is a critical document in the mortgage application process as well. These are generally 3,000 per million of the market value. So if I put this into context, you're talking about a $10 million property, you budget about 30,000 plus GCT plus incidentals, which are traveling and title searches and such and such. You're looking at about $36,000, $38,000 for evaluation for a $10 million property. And then you have the mortgage processing fee, and this ranges between 1.5 to 3%, and it's dependent on the institution that you're going to, right? I hope you you always go to Victoria Mutual. And well, I think there's just 2 slides leaving this presentation, so let me just flow with it. I'm just gonna give you a little information about valuation, and that is my pet event, so I like to talk about valuation. So in the purposes for valuation, right? You typically, most times you want to assess the market value of the property, but there are many other reasons for valuation. I'm not going to get into it because we're now on the topic of home ownership, buying land, using mortgages and such. So we're going to stick to market value, right? And we are guided by the RICS and definition of market value, and RICS is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, right? And this is the estimated amount for which an asset or liability should exchange on the date of valuation between willing buyer, willing seller in an arm's length transaction after proper marketing and where parties had each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. So this is the mind frame of the valuer when we're doing a valuation. A valuer does not pick a number out the air and say, oh, I think this property is valued at 10 million or 20 million or 30 million. We are guided by these principles: willing buyer, willing seller, arm's length transaction, proper marketing, acting knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. So the market value must fit or meet all these criteria, right? So in a typical valuation, you will see the market value, you'll see the for sale price, and then you will see the replacement cost. The market value is important for the loan in the first instance. The for sale price is this is something that the bank looks on and say, all right, in the event that this loan goes bad and we need to liquidate, what is the price we can get for this property, ignoring all these criteria of the market value. So like a fire sale, a cash sale, how quickly we can turn this property back into cash so we can move on with our business, which is lending money to people to purchase homes. And then the replacement cost now, this is the amount which is the amount that is sufficient to reconstruct this property with the modern equivalent, right? So there's a difference between replacement and reinstatement. We're not going to get into that. But for the loan application, the property must be insured, and the replacement cost will inform the insurance figure that you will pay in that mortgage lump sum that you will set aside every month, right? And generally, there are 3 approaches to valuation. And then you have the market approach, which is generally looking at sale comparables. These are comparable properties which have been sold on the market and making your adjustments. Myself, Mr. Miller, Dr. Beale, Mrs. Miller, and Moffat, we know we are trained and skilled in this area. So we know how to apply these techniques. And then you have the income approach, which is looking at the income earning potential of the property and capitalizing that flow of income to say what the value of the property is. This is primarily suited for investment properties. And when we say investment properties, people generally look at investment properties as commercial properties, but you have a lot of residential properties that are investment properties. People are now big into the Airbnb, and not just Airbnb, because we had short-term rentals prior to Airbnb, but Airbnb is just a shorter term rental, right? Because we had the villas before that people would rent for 2 weeks, a month, and such. Now we have Airbnb where you can get a portion of a week, you can go up to a month and so on. And then, so you would have purchased these properties with the income generating capacity at the front of your head to say, all right, I'm going to earn X amount from this property. And I'm sure when you're doing that, you're matching that earnings against the liabilities that comes with the property, which is the mortgage payment, the maintenance, the property tax, and all those stuff which have been discussed by my previous presenters. So when you look at that, this is why this approach is very important. And then you have the cost approach, which is pretty much saying, why would I pay more for a property than it would cost me to build? And we spoke about the build and own land earlier. So, you know, in those areas or parishes that are not so dense and you can find available lands, you will think about this more than purchasing a property that is completed. So you say, all right, I can buy John Brown's property over there for 10 million, but if I get the same size lot over here for 2.5 million or 3 million, I can use 5 million and get the same size house. So then now you start saying, okay, all right, so the cost approach can be very useful in this assessment, but this, I must say, for residential properties, the cost approach is the least preferred method. It's a good guidance, but it's the least preferred. And this is my penultimate slide, which is just running you through the valuation process. Very nice and easy, receiving of the instructions from the client, conducting the research prior to going out in the field. You do your inspection of the property, as well as inspecting the comparables or the relevant, the other bits and pieces of the puzzle that will help you to form your opinion for value. So when you go out, you want to do all the inspections right there. You don't want to be going out and then going back again to do more inspections. And then now you sit at your table, as we are sitting now in our house, and you do your calculation. This is a real science. So you sit at your table and you analyze the information. After analysis of the information, then you prepare your report. Have your report finalized. It's always good to have the report double checked by somebody else, even if you are the signing officer. You have somebody else look at the report to ensure the grammar is okay, the calculation is okay, because this document is a very important document, and there's a lot of legal ramifications. There's a lot of legal things that can be mixed up in this, and you want to be as transparent and accurate as possible. A valuation is an opinion, but it's not a wild opinion. You know, it's an informed opinion. So you want to be as sure can be when you're preparing a report, and then you dispatch a report. And that's the valuation process in a nutshell. Pretty much, sometimes as valuers, we tell somebody that the valuation can take 2 days, it can take 5 days, it can take 10 days. It is dependent on the property that you're valuing. Some properties are harder to value than some. And it doesn't mean that the most expensive properties are the hardest properties to value. Sometimes the least expensive properties are very difficult to value. So it's all based on the availability of information, and that if information is readily available, your valuation is easier. It doesn't matter the price of the property. So that's a wrap. And I turned over. Let me see. Well, I apologize for going over. I hope it was exciting.
I hear the one Jermaine talking about being fiscally conservative, and you see that vehicle behind him.
Yes. We do auto loan here at Victoria.
I hear him putting an advertisement for Victoria Mutual as well.
Always. It's all over the presentation.
Yes. Chock full of information. Just to add to it, that Jermaine also is able to assist you with technology, yes, able to assist you with retrofitting your property, I believe, right, Jermaine?
Correct. We're in the business of total real estate, you know.
Yes. So your reflections, Chris, in 30 seconds.
As a valuer, I appreciate you shedding light on the processes and what is required in doing a valuation. And honestly, the importance of the costs that is associated with with buying and selling a property. Those things make up a lot of the big issues that persons face when acquiring and when selling. We need to budget for these things, and I agree. Stamp as well. Stamp duty. He spoke about stamp duty, and it's not. But you might think that they assess the sale price, but it's actually the market value. So if they actually think that the market value it's too high or too low or understated, they will reassess it and get a so charge the rightful amount. And that's what they will charge it on. But my question though, what about if they see that the value is overstated? Do they do the same thing and charge a lower stamp duty?
I've never seen that. I've never seen that. I've never seen that. I think that would be a matter of experience,
you know?
They don't. They actually don't.
Taxes.
Guess they're looking out for the country.
Yes, we have a lot to discuss in the Q&A section. I'm particularly concerned about, I believe, the exploitation of folks. I mean, I think people are depressed driving by some of these beautiful places. They can never attain to it. You know, who is it for? You can budget till you die. Some of us will never be able.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say never. I would say never.
I said be purposeful.
Well,
prepare yourself for the Q&A.
I must make particular note of the wonderful arrangement years ago with the NHT and the unions, and how unions estate was birthed. I'm thinking maybe it was historic. I'm not sure if it was the first time that the deposit, the closing costs, everything was rolled into one. Mm-hmm. And a lot of folks were able to afford that in the government sector. In fact, I paid only $3,500 for a brand new townhouse apartment. I don't know if that was ever done before, but that was a watershed moment for me. And I think creative models like that need to be continued by the government, and we'll talk about that. But thank you, Jermaine. Amen. Thanks everyone for joining us so far. We have well over 100 cumulatively. Chris, with all our channels, YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom. And we have the questions that are building on YouTube. We're going to get to you folks, those questions and comments on YouTube in particular in the Q&A section. But Moffat, we can take turns now introducing this next lady. She's a celebrity lawyer.
Yeah, man. And I can tell you, this is a good friend of mine as well.
Yes.
I don't know what.
Former co-worker. And she has branched off into greater things, and she can be seen in the public sphere commenting on all kind of issues from a legal perspective. Nicole Gordon, attorney at law. We want to welcome her to the Heart to Heart talk show and to talk to us about estate planning. And she has a huge job. Her name has been called the most on this program in all the presentations. So the burden of the proof.
Might not exactly be her name, but the lawyer. We'll expound.
Well, in the typical court setup, the burden of the thing is on the lawyers, so to prove or disprove. So, Nicole, welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Yes. We look forward to your presentation on estate planning and management, and it's all over to you.
Thank you. I am trying to share my screen. I'm trying to find my presentation.
All right. So while Nicole is searching for the evidence, we see a number of requests asking for the various presentations. I'm not sure if there is intellectual property on some of them, but the presenters, for those on Zoom, you may inbox them and ask them. The presenters also, you can indicate to me if the presentations can be shared. I think Rochelle used a unique software. I'm not sure what she used. If hers can be PDF'd, if they allow, then we can send it to you. But you have to subscribe to the Heart to Heart Talk show in order to get it. So you have to send me an email, TyrrellAMorgan@gmail.com. Tyrell A. Morgan at Gmail. And an extra bonus, yeah, you subscribe to Christopher Moffat's channel. Mixing with the Moffats. Yes.
Behind me.
Yes. You will get all the presentations. So they're on YouTube. Very exciting family. So we want to welcome everyone. All right. So I see a little conversation building in the Zoom about the fees.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, the fees is very it's very interesting, you know.
Yes, yes.
So I guess at the end we can get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I see Nicole is ready.
Yes, it's
Right,
a lot
Nikki?
of money in this real estate. So that's why we have these real estate folks to walk us through complication, because an ordinary person doesn't have the time to go through all of that. But we're
Yep.
grateful for lawyers and real estate folks.
It's good to know yourself. It is good to know yourself.
So while Nicole presses the F5 on her keyboard and she goes into full mode, she's ready to.
I'm going to slideshow.
And you can engage her as your lawyer. I can certainly endorse the quality of her work, having worked with her at the Urban Development Corporation previously.
All right, thank you so much. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. It worked perfectly, but Murphy's Law, will always take over. Before I start, very quickly, there was a conversation online and Jermaine was trying to draw me out. So let me just quickly answer some of the questions that he mentioned. One, he talked about if you can't find your title. If you lose your title and you don't have that duplicate certificate, you're gonna have to make a lost title application to the titles office. That costs money, it takes time. So try and keep your title with you and intact. He asked about the modification of covenants. If you expand your house and you do it in breach of your covenants, you either have to modify the covenant or knock it down. If they come to you, if KSAMC comes to you, you'd have a problem. And to modify your covenant, you have to go to court. So to avoid that process, it is better that you stick by the rules. In terms of legal documents, my advice to you is you're supposed to be able to ask your attorney any question that you want to ask. And so feel free, ask for all the documents that you need to see and have the conversations. Why do you need to pay off your NWC and your property tax? They run with the land. If you purchase a property and your mortgagee won't allow it, but if you purchase a property and there's a water bill on it and a property tax on it and it's not cleared, the purchaser will take it over when their name goes on that title. So if you're purchasing a property cash, if you're doing a mortgage, they will ask for it. But if you're purchasing a property cash, ensure that you ask for the water bill, ensure that you check the property tax receipts. And you can do that online. In terms of the stamp duty, it's a tax for the government. The stamp duty act says we have to pay it, so we have to pay it. That's just how it is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about estate planning. And I will not be able to delve fully into, and there's a question online, I'll get to that after. I won't be able to delve fully into everything, but I'll try and move as quickly as I can and take your questions afterwards. So what is your estate? Your estate is really your assets minus your liabilities. At the core, that's all it is. Why is it important to do estate planning and what is it all about? What you're doing is you're determining who your beneficiaries are to those assets that you're talking about, determining who will get them and what they will get. And simultaneously, what estate planning is about is minimizing your tax burden. And I'll talk about the taxes a little later down. The fact of the matter is that if we don't plan, we're going to work very hard in life for a really long time. A lot of us will work for 40, 50, some of us 60 years of our lives. And at the end of it, we can lose it or it will go where we don't want it to go. And simply put, we really don't want that. So it's better to plan than to have Legislation and the government determine what will happen to our estates. So the form that this presentation will take, I want to give you some practical steps for estate planning that you can do right now. And then I want to talk about some important terms and issues that have to do with our estates. Practical step, make an inventory of all your assets and liabilities. Some people, you say that to them and them say, oh, but me not have nothing, but most of us do. What about your car, your bank account, any investment that you have? You also have to make a list of your liabilities. So do you have credit card debt, serious debt? Do you have a motor vehicle debt? Do you have a mortgage and so on? It's important to just list them out, your collectibles. It may not be liquid, it may be chattel. So you might have a collection of watches, pens, whatever it is. You might have some favorite, Jermaine might have a collection of LPs or, music that he might want to leave for his son or daughter. So that is important. Ensure that you locate your titles. And we talked about this early. Do two things. One, put them in a safe location. Your title for your vehicle. Once, if you don't have it, I can tell you it's very hard to get back your motor vehicle title. So please don't lose it. The title for your property, if what you have is a title. We're not talking today about untitled land. So put them in a safe location and let somebody else know where the documents are. It's very important. And your bank account, provide that list to somebody. Then it's important to determine your family's needs. If it is that you weren't around, what would it look like? What would your family need to survive if it is that you die the next 2 years, the next 5 years? Because you never know what life has in store for us. It's important, especially if you have young children or if you have children or family members with a disability and you want to be able to care for them. Determine who you would like to administer your estate. So this process of administration requires that we have a personal representative. And we will talk about it in the context of the executor and the will later on. And the administrator, if in the case when you do not leave a will. But determine who you trust and they're stable, who can do the administration for you. Determine who are your beneficiaries. Now, this can be anybody, your spouse, your children, it can be a friend, it can be your church. I've written many wills where people have left items to their church and provisions for their churches. Determine whether you need help in preparing the documentation. And I suggest that you do, just because I find I can tell when an attorney has written a will and when somebody else write the will. And sometimes it's just confusing otherwise. Always be willing to reassess your position. Your life changes over time. And so your assets may grow as well. There are life changes. And so your how it is that you deal with and address your estate will also change. I'm going to talk a little bit about wills. Don't be afraid to write a will. It is not a death warrant. It's actually very helpful and important. What is it? What the will is a declaration of the deceased person's intent on matters which he wants to take effect after death. So what it does is that it disposes of we call it the testator. The person who makes the will is a testator. So it disposes of the testator's property on his or her death. In the will, though, we also take instructions on things like funeral directions. Some people want to be cremated. Some people don't want to be cremated. They want to be buried at a particular church. They want to be beside their brother. They want to be beside the spouse, that sort of thing. You can also put those in the will. There's a legislation called the Wills Act that governs wills. A will only takes effect on someone's death, right? So when you write a will and you put a beneficiary in there, there is no interest. If you leave the house to your daughter, she does not have an interest in the will before you are dead. Except, so the will takes effect on the person's death. Recently, I found that I've been asked to prepare what's called a living will, which is a bit of a misnomer. And we don't really have the concept so much in Jamaica. In England, they have legislation on it. We do not here. But this is not about when you die. This is about exercising your choice about how you want the end of your life to be. And interestingly, I actually had a conversation with a Christian the other day who I mentioned this to because she was in the unfortunate circumstance of a family member just on the deathbed and the doctor saying, we can't go any further. Like, this is it. We know that if we pull this plug, she won't survive. And a decision just had to be made. Provisions can be made for that, and that is called a living will. Powers of attorney, some of it is viewed differently overseas, but certainly it does not have effect after your death. So in your estate planning, you can have a power of attorney in the event that you may lose capacity to do certain things and you want them to do it, but it doesn't take effect after death, but it can help you with your planning. So very, very quick facts. This is not about wills, but just some little facts about wills. I don't know if anybody wants to raise a hand or if he's willing to unmute anybody, but can a blind person witness a will? Anybody want to try? I'm not looking.
They can use the raise hand icon. They're asking if they're getting discounts already on anything today. So be prepared once you ask questions. They want goodies. Folks, anybody want to vocalize? Just use a raise hand. We'll unmute you. Can a blind person witness a will?
If it's not quick enough, I'm just going to go. Somebody's there?
Somebody said yes with Braille.
And that's quite correct. If the testator's signature is in Braille, that's what is critical. So there's a station clause, and they'll be able to do it. Can someone under the age of 18 make a valid will?
Someone also asked if they could do that with a recording.
No, well, because it has to be a signature. The Wills Act, it has to be a signature. Can someone under the age of 18 make a valid will? I'm going to go quickly because of time. No, they can't, because Section 5 of the Wills Act says that the person must reach the age of majority. What about an executor obtaining a gift under a will? So when you choose that executor for your will, can you leave something for them? Yes, you can. Does marriage affect a will? I'll take an answer to that.
I learned the shocking truth about this the other day. I await your response to this.
Yes, they said yes.
Yes, it can. Absolutely. Marriage revokes the will, and that's Section 13 of the Wills Act. I'm going to talk a little bit about probate because we hear the term all the time, and sometimes people ask me, what is this thing called probate? It's a legal process. Two things happen when you do this thing we call probate. You determine whether a will is valid. So you only probate a will. When you talk about probate, it's only in relation to a will. Secondly, you determine who is legally responsible for administering the estate. And that person or those persons are called your executor. All right. So 1, is the will valid? 2, who is responsible? Can the will not be valid? Absolutely. And I have seen it. Right. Sometimes you put in a will and it bounces and you have to do something else for different reasons. So it's important that certain things are followed, a certain process is followed when preparing the will, but we're not talking about that today. What is the role of an executor? So some of you on this call, this Zoom call, may have been asked to be executors. It's a very, very important role. It's a legal role. What the executor is supposed to do is 4 things. 1, ascertain the net estate. Remember, I mentioned earlier listing out those assets. The executor will need all of that information. They apply for the grant of probate. So the executors or the executors are the people who apply for the grant. They have to pay off your liabilities. And they also then, having done that, distribute the estate, which is called the residue, to the named beneficiaries. Executors are entitled to receive a 6% commission. Often they don't take it because usually they're your friends, or sometimes it's your spouse or a relative. And because they tend to be getting something, they don't tend to take their 6%, but they're entitled to it by law. It's helpful, I find, to appoint 2 executors, not 1. So when I said think of who you want to administer the estate, think of 2 persons, maybe even 3. One of them might die. They might decide, listen, I'm too old, I can't bother with this. It's too much work chasing down the assets, depending on the extent of your estate. So it's good to have a couple. It's good to have more than 1. There's a particular form of land that, or property holding, to be more forensic with the language, that does not fall to probate. And that's when you have a joint tenancy. Many of us would have heard the term joint tenancy, tenancy in common. And very quickly, a joint tenancy is essentially where you hold 100% of the property and I hold or own 100% of the property as well. So what happens is that because we both have 100%, we are both full owners of the property. When you die, I still have my 100%. And so it's mine. The fee simple is mine in totality. We call that the right of survivorship. In those circumstances, it doesn't form a part of the estate. And what we do is an application to note death, which is a completely separate process. It's not a part of that court process. The tenancy in common is when you have individual shares. It's not individual shares on the ground. It's not you have the left side and I have the right side. Because if you write that in a will, and I'm begging you, please don't, I've seen it. It's very difficult to deal with. If you write that in a will, we're still going to say you have a 1/3 share or you have a 1/2 share. So it is where you have particular shares separate from each other, and you can leave your share, your what you call undivided share, to the person of your choice. Now, what happens if you do not prepare a will? And this is important. Very simply put, if you don't do it, the government will. So if you don't decide, 1, who you want your beneficiaries to be, 2, who you want to administer your estate, the Intestates, Estates, and Property Charges Act lists this out very, very clearly. Who it is will take from your estate. And they have there what they call a table of distribution. And the table of distribution provides the order of priority of the persons who will take your estate if you don't decide who will do it. Your spouse, your issue, that's your children, parents, brothers and sisters of the whole blood, brothers and sisters of the half blood, grandparents, uncles, the crown, and so on. Now, the only persons, that's the spouse, the children, your parents, can share property based on the distribution that's stated in the legislation. If they are not around, then the next category, which would be your brothers and sisters, they get everything. Your spouse will get all your personal items. So all your pictures, all your paintings, all your watches, if you have nice pens and jewelry, they get all of that. So if you, for example, wanted to leave something to your children, you can't because the law says your spouse has to get it. Now, please be very clear. If you are separated and not divorced, your spouse is still your spouse because there's only one. All right, so we have to bear that in mind. The spouse gets a lump sum, which is either $10,000 or 10% of your net estate, whichever is greater. So if you don't put it in a will, what the spouse is supposed to get, what this person and that person, that's what they'll get. And they're also entitled to interest. And there is a list of other things in terms of how these things are divided. I just want to make 2 points in terms of definition. I said it earlier, spouse is defined and you can have only one. if you are in a common law situation, you're not just a spouse. You actually have to get a court order for you to be called legally spouse. So there still is a legal process. That's important. Remember Michael Manley Time and the Status of Children Act. All children are of equal status. So if the child is out of wedlock, during the marriage, whatever it is, a child is a child. If it's a stepchild, it can be a child of the family. So those persons will qualify as children and are entitled to benefit from your estate. I want to talk a little bit about the taxes. Now, I'm not talking here about property taxes that were discussed earlier. Those are annual taxes. I'm talking here about transfer tax on death. Why is it important in your estate planning? It's important because it can significantly reduce the worth of your estate. And very importantly, this is where a lot of roadblock is formed when people are dealing with their estate. They just can't pay the duties because it was quite high, but depending on the value of the estate, it can actually be pretty substantial. The transfer tax on death is on the net market value of the estate. Now, assets include land, leases, securities, and the Transfer Tax Act states that it includes land overseas as well. It includes securities in a foreign company if you're domiciled in Jamaica. How much are we talking about? We're talking about 1.5% of the net market value of the property at the time of the death of the deceased. So if you're dealing with the administration, I'll use the general term, whether it is probate or administration in 2021, but the person died in 2010, it's the value of the property in 2010. However, if it is that you don't deal with it in 2010, every year after that, you're going to pay 6% interest on the taxes that you ought to have paid. So there is an interest payment that is due. There's no tax that is payable on what's called the principal home or the matrimonial home. So for example, if you and your spouse owned a property, not as joint tenants though, could have been tenants in common, or if the spouse owned the property and passed, and the property is now being passed to you, whatever share of it, you can make an application, if it's the principal home, for a waiver of the tax. Now, it was limited to spouse initially, but now the Transfer Tax Act has expanded that to close relatives. So I think if your brother is living there, your sister, a stepson, they too can ask for the stamp office for the exemption. In 2019, 2020, in that budget debate, in that budget cycle rather, and Jermaine mentioned this, when the tax is reduced, one of the things that they did was to increase the tax threshold for estates. So I think it was $100,000 before, but now it's been increased to $10 million, where you don't have to pay that transfer tax on death for properties that are valued less than $10 million. If there's a joint tenancy, now remember I said to you that the process here is different. You make an application to note the death on title. Suppose it's two persons. You'd pay 50% of the value of the property, just 50% because they split it in half. If it's three persons, you would pay on the 1/3 of the property. I mentioned before that there's a 6% per annum interest on any duty not paid 1 year after death. Now there are other fees that are involved when you're dealing with either administration or probate. You have to pay the titles office fees. When you're dealing with administration where you have not made a will, you have to advertise for creditors, and you have other advertising as well. So you have to pay for that. When there's a child involved and they have not left the will, you actually have to have assistance from the administrator general. And so you have to get a certificate. There's a fee there. You have to stamp the oath. You have to pay for that. You have to stamp the grant. You have to pay for that. There are attorney's fees, and you also have the executor's commission if it is that they will be taking their percentage. Because of all of those fees, I usually am a proponent of some form of life insurance. And this is for a very simple reason. Some people are real estate asset rich, but they're not very liquid. And the life insurance assists with some liquidity that can actually be extremely helpful in that time of need. So what it does is that it helps to build or expand your estate so that there's something there for the beneficiaries. But very important, if you have that cash, you can preserve the existing estate to help to pay for those taxes that I spoke about earlier. Because what happens sometimes is that you cannot, even if there's a will, sometimes you have to sell the property in order to pay the taxes for another estate. And because of that, you don't benefit as is stated under the will. And that can happen because of the lack of liquidity. So what it does is that it provides some flexibility with respect to the liquidity so that you can actually benefit. You can have a situation where your liabilities exceed your cash, right? And so you need the money to tide you over. You can have a situation where you don't want to sell any of the properties, but you've left children who are still in school, and those children have to be taken care of. The life insurance is extremely important for that. And so I'll end where I started, which is to say, if we don't plan, you can spend 30 years of your life, 40 years of your life, working really hard and thinking that you're building a legacy for so and so and so. And because you have not planned properly, you lose it in some way or shape or form because you have to sell it to pay the taxes, for example, or it goes to unintended beneficiaries because you have not prepared a will. And as I said, we really, really don't want that. I just want to say one thing, because there was a question there about the realtor, and maybe Jermaine can back me up on this. There was a question about who pays the realtor. The point that I was making is that most times it is the vendor who engages the realtor. So because it just makes more sense that way, because usually you want to sell the house, and so the vendor usually ends up paying the realtor. The point that I'm making is that it's not that it cannot be the other way around. It can be, because I have seen it happen, and I'm saying I saw it happen up to last month with a client of mine. So it's not that it can't be the other way, but what usually happens is that if you're a purchaser, you kind of go to a realtor with the expectation that they've already been engaged. So they'll just have a plethora of properties and say, yeah, man, I'm selling A, B, C, D, go down the line. You don't have to pay them anything because they're already engaged by that vendor. So I'm not discouraging any purchasers from going. You should, because they're on the system, they're on the MLS system. And so they will be able to provide you with options. So I hope I clarified that. So it's not that I was saying that the purchaser pays or that it's not the other. I'm saying it's not impossible for it to happen, and I've seen it. All right. So,
Terrell, I think Dr. Beale and Rochelle should be able to back me up on this one. I think the real estate Dealers and Developers Act specifically speaks to the vendor paying the commission.
I've seen it though.
5%. That it doesn't exclude or eliminate the fact that a realtor can negotiate a commission with the purchaser. How does that sound, Rochelle and Dr. Beale?
Well, I can't quote the act, but maybe Dr. Beale can quote the act, but I know that it's something that happens in practice. But it's an exception. It's not the norm.
It's an exception, right? It's not the norm. That's the point that I was making. It is absolutely not the norm.
There's more so an arrangement between
Yes, and negotiate.
Prospective purchaser and the realtor. They engage the realtor to seek the property for them.
Right. So maybe that person is like rushing to get something or want special
Yeah.
attention or something. So they ask you to do it. And I think
Well,
they
let
ask
me-
about conflict of interest. You'll have to declare it.
Right.
Upfront
both
that you're
persons have
doing
to
for
agree
both.
that they
Right.
want that.
And the person has to agree.
But I can tell you for sure, in many instances, the realtor works harder for the purchaser than the vendor. Yes, a purchaser will call you with 50 MLS numbers,
Exactly.
and they want to take your entire weekend to drive from one property to the next, to the next, to the next, and they are not necessarily in close proximity.
That's true.
But but it's definitely an arrangement. It has to be a personal arrangement with both the purchaser and the realtor. The vendor wouldn't get involved in that. The vendor of the property would get involved in that arrangement. They would.
All right. Yeah, so the fire has started already. You all are preempting the Q&A. But Nicole, you have stimulated much conversation. Many questions are there to be responded to online. We want to hold them. We're almost there, folks. Just one more thing. Jermaine, come on in. Tell us what's trending in properties. We know we can't afford the thing behind you, but
You can.
tell us.
I keep saying you can. You can.
Some of us.
There are means and ways of doing things.
Okay.
All right, let me see if I can just do a quick synopsis of what's happening locally and what is trending, as Tyrell would refer to it as. All right, let me move this over, and then I bring this up. Come on up. All right. So what is trending, right? Backtrack. Wow. All right. This slide should be a little smaller. However, we can move on. So, Nicole, very interesting presentation. I have the will document. I'm going to start write it up tonight. All right. So we were talking about whether it is possible to buy some of these properties or not. And I'm telling you that it is possible. A lot of us are not even aware of how much we can get to borrow. We have never done a pre-qualification exercise. So if you have never assessed your capacity to borrow, how can you know what you afford or what you cannot afford? So it is important to do that exercise, right?
All right, Jermaine, the folks want to hear you a little bit more, so you could put the microphone a little closer so they could hear.
Oh, you're not here. You should be hearing me well, man. How am I sounding now? Check. Love and respect.
Yes, DJ.
All right. All right. You know, when you go to a stage show and you run off the stage and them call you back, it means that you have done well, you know. All right. So yes, I was saying to you that there are ways and there's a lot of mechanisms right now that allows people to be better able to afford properties. And we spoke about NHT, and there's a lot of ways with NHT that you can access more than the 6.5 that each person is eligible for. Tyrell had mentioned only paying $3,500 to get a home in United States, right? I can't talk my business now because I'm no longer a neighbor of Tyrell. I was one of those lucky persons to get into United States for $3,500. So NHT provides additional funding, and I think Tyrell should bring on Mr. Burbick. I can make the connection with him for you to speak more about the NHT and the facilities that they offer for Jamaicans, yard and abroad. But in their development, in NHT developments, they go beyond the 6.5 million, and I'll just leave it at that and allow the NHT person to come on and explain how you can go around the system or find the channels through the systems to get those.
Fix up that Durbate. Fix that up. The police come first.
Now go around it. Find the legal ways. The legal ways to getting
additional resources.
Yes. All right. So I'm talking about trending now. So we always start from the main area of focus, which is the corporate area, Kingston and St. Andrew. And we can see that the city is expanding vertically because there's not much more land available to go horizontal. So we are seeing a lot of high-rise development. In 2019, I think the densities were revised across the corporate area. And well, the KMA, Kingston Metropolitan Area, which is more than just the corporate area. And what you have seen is, as a result of those densities being revised, is that you are getting intensification of land use, which means that you are getting more habitable rooms per acre than what that previously existed, right? So that you have the emergence of high-rise apartment developments. And right here we have in this picture, we have South, 20th South, and then we have the Loft, which are typically two examples, right? The price of these units, some of these units are, so there are two mechanisms here. And there are some realtors online that can attest to this. There's some amount of benefits to buying pre-construction versus buying closer to the end of the construction cycle or after the project has completed. So while you would see a project and it says completion 2022, if you are listening to Rochelle's presentation and you want to save money and such, it's good to buy into a pre-construction because your mortgage payment won't start until that property is handed over to you, and you'll get to save all those funds, having secured that property by paying down your deposit and signing up the documents that you should be signing. You'll get that time between your agreement and the completion date of the development to save additional funds. And your life situation may change several times, since you may get a different position, you may be earning way more. So it is possible. That's basically what I'm saying. It is possible. So, oh yes, this is what. So this is Kingston and St. Andrew. So what's trending in other parishes? And I specifically chose St. Catherine, Clarendon, St. Anne, Trelawney, and St. James. And these are gated residential communities, primarily detached single-story homes, right? So in this slide, you'd see a picture of Caribbean Estates. You have Stonebrook Vista. This one is New Harbor Village. And then you have Glenmore Country Club. So I try to touch something that is in each parish, right? There are many more gated complexes. And they will just surface by the day. So, recently NHT advertised Colbert Manor that went in a flash, and that's also a pre-construction, and that's in Old Harbor. There is the extension of Richmond in St. Anne. We have the Crest and some others going further inland. There are several gated, but these are typically what's happening in these parishes. Security is a major concern. Not that security is not a concern in other parishes, but when you put a gated complex, you actually the price of the property is automatically increased by just putting a fence around the development. People really value gated communities, and we see there is a major difference between a property located in a gated community versus one that is not in a gated community. While that is so, the gated communities come with their own set of headaches. People not paying maintenance, which is the biggest problem in gated communities. Having that undivided share in the common area, people are not understanding what that means, right? It means that you're part owner of the roads, you're part owner of the play areas and such, and you should contribute to the maintenance of those areas. It is written on your title. Please read your title. Please understand your responsibility and be good citizens. We move on. Manchester, St. Elizabeth, Portland, St. Mary, Hanover, St. Thomas, Westmoreland. These areas are not as dense as, surely not Kingston, St. Catherine, St. Anne, and the other areas that I mentioned in the previous slide. So you would find that the common practice in these parishes are build on own land. I'm not saying that there are not gated communities in these parishes, but the common practice is that, you know, the land is available. People can buy land, and once you have that alternative, it will be explored. People can buy land and build versus buy a completed house or a second-hand house if you want to put it a pre-owned house or such. That option is there. That's not readily available in Kingston and St. Andrew, and in the locations in St. Catherine closer to Kingston and St. Andrew. And well, I think that will wrap up all the parishes. I don't miss any parish there. I must point out though, in this whole sale process, right? There are 3 variables at play. And this will go back to the whole point of affordability. You have the price of the property. You have the loan term, and you have interest rates. These variables, you can play with these variables to determine affordability. What do I mean by that? If a property is priced high, say for argument's sake, Tyrell will say, who's going to afford those properties? So you see a 2-bedroom apartment for $30 million. If you are below 30 and you can get a 40-year repayment term, loan term, and you're getting a low interest rate, you might be surprised that you can actually afford this property. So it is dependent on your age, dependent on the interest rate that you're getting, and not just the price. So don't be so scared of the price, right? I think previously Rochelle had mentioned that we can step away from the norm and don't pursue home ownership, as people would tell you, oh, as you get out of college, try buy something and such. I tend to encourage people to get into home ownership as early as possible, because that age factor can make a big difference. So get into it as early as possible. And please do not subscribe to the concept of dream home. Every night you go to your bed, you dream. So you keep on dreaming. So you're going to dream big, and then you're going to start dreaming small. So when that arthritis starts kicking and you have to climb those staircases, you start dreaming small. So you upscale, you downscale, right? So you're young, you want that big, nice, multi-story house on the hill. When you start getting up in age and such, you want a manageable space. You don't want to be going out to doing the yard work and all of that. And you want to be close to the hospitals. So the dynamics change, your needs change. And also, you know, real estate, I had a lecturer in college, and she said that the best way to acquire your dream property is to buy what you can afford now. The property you buy now will appreciate in value, probably not at the same pace as your dream home, but you will be able to get that appreciation in value, which is called the equity, plus you'll be saving. So when you decide to cash in on those and make up the money and put the money together, I think you find that attaining the dream home is much more realistic than before. You cannot save to buy a home, pretty much. All right, and I think I will wrap right there. You know, my presentation we didn't go specifically into area of concentration, because, you know, on the North Coast, we see more and more development along the coastlines or on the elevated lands, which are view of the sea. In the central parishes, the developments are getting closer and closer, are setting up closer to the highways because of increased accessibilities. In the corporate area, it's actually anywhere the property is available, because supply of land is finite, and we are now edging closer to redevelopment in Kingston. That this is something that I want to see in my lifetime happening in Jamaica in a real way, where we can demolish a multi-story building and put up a brand new building on that same site. I think we do.
That is starting now.
We do a lot
downtown.
Yeah, we do a lot of renovation, and I think renovation is just as expensive as new construction, and it comes with a lot of headache. So I really want to see redevelopment becoming a common thing in Jamaica. And I'll wrap there. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Jermaine Williamson. All right. So here we are, folks. We are here at the Q&A. I see folks lining up already. So, folks, you can use the raise hand icon. We have some leading questions for the panel, stemming from their presentations and also from the numerous questions that are on social media and also in the Zoom space. So everybody's in. Yes. Chris, how you feeling?
Why, I'm telling you,
You like you're at school?
I feel like I have some of the edges that I needed to smooth out was done today, you know. I really appreciate the presenters and their insights and really informative presentations.
Yes.
All the help to the questions right now.
Yeah, man. All the help that we need is here in Jamaica. Excellent, brilliant folks. All right. So I see Cheryl Lynn. Cheryl. Yes.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing, everybody? I'm a realtor with Coal Banker, and I have to say I was sent this invitation just coincidentally by my hairdresser. So I'm so happy that you did, because I've benefited so much. I mean, there's so much. I want to say a big thank you to all the panel presenters. Excellent presentation. I don't think our sector could do a better job, and I really did learn a lot. My question is for Mrs. Gordon with regard to will type that I'm aware of called a living revocable trust. Is that applicable in Jamaica?
Sorry.
In any form at all?
I have not seen it. That you're talking about, that the one that they call the durable will, that they claim that sort of survives death.
It's the one where you actually use it in the form of it's a living revocable trust. So you make that while you're alive. It's almost like it replaces a will. I guess I'm knowledgeable about it because of a podcast that I listened to with Susie Ormond, US-based money expert or financial expert, and she always make reference to a living revocable trust. So it's equivalent to using a will, except for you can make changes to that intention without actually doing what is known as a typical will. So I don't know if there's some advantage or disadvantage, or if it is even legal here in Jamaica.
I think I'd probably have to I think I know the podcast that you're talking about, but I probably would have to actually see the document to be able to make a determination. Yes, we can have trusts. You can actually create a trust with your will to leave something for someone. You can create a trust outside of a will. As far as the revocable part is concerned, you can revoke a power of attorney. As I said, the living wills that I'm familiar with are generally in the particular context, and living will is a bit of a misnomer, and we definitely have no living will legislation in Jamaica. So we'll have to follow what we call the common law for that. But the way I think, from what I recall from the podcast, there are different avenues that you could use to actually do the same thing. But I don't, that concept, that actual nomenclature does not really exist here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Tamikia. Thank you, Cheryl. Tamikia. Come on in. Tamikia?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I came on late, so maybe some of the questions that I have would have already been addressed, but please bear with me because I was late. I have 3 questions, 3 very pertinent questions. I will say them slowly so that perhaps you can make a note of it. The first one: what advice would you give to young people, like young or persons new to the world of work who want to purchase property as an investment, is it better to purchase residential property, commercial property, or land? That's the first question. The second question.
Well, I think maybe how many questions you have, Tamiki?
Just three.
Okay.
Do them one at a time.
Yeah. Let's answer them one at a time because I'm old and most of my panelists are old.
Speak for yourself.
Who wants to take that?
Let me take the first question. So
I think Jermaine could.
Yes.
A young person, what advice you have for a young person who wants to purchase property for investment?
For investment.
All right. The first thing I can say to you is that it is easier now for young people to invest in property versus people of I would say our age. I think we are all in the same age group. When we were graduating university, you didn't have 5% deposit. You didn't have low interest rates. You didn't have. I don't even think you had 40-year mortgages. So the landscape is set now for young people to start the journey of home ownership as quickly as 6 months after leaving university, if you find meaningful employment or you have the capital, the capacity, right? You have loans now, 100% financing. So once you're off probation and you have that nice paycheck, you can start your journey to home ownership.
What is the best property?
In terms of the property to buy, if you buy land only, right? Land in itself, you will have to have a plan to develop that land. Land by itself does not appreciate as fast as an improved property. So we have unimproved and we have improved properties, right? So we call land, vacant land, unimproved, right? It can be an investment because you can find a property which has development potential and you can go through the process of getting those subdivision approvals and such and such and such, and then you sell the land with the development approval, or you can go ahead and do the development yourself. Or you get a set of colleagues come together and you purchase a property and you can do the development and sell it back. So it can be, so land in itself can be bought for investment purposes. Pre-COVID, you had a lot of people who were buying apartments for Airbnb. People are still buying apartments for Airbnb because they're planning for the reopening, which is inevitable. So that is also an option as well. What you have to balance though is the projected income from these property in comparison to the mortgage. Property gives you two types of return, right? You have capital appreciation and then you have cash flow, which is rent. So you have to mix. You have to know what you're in it for. You're in it for the capital appreciation or you're in it for the monthly income or such. So you have to make that determination. I don't know if Andrew and Rochelle wants to help me out here. I don't know what
we're just saying another key point is to seek professional help before you make any decision. Because as Jermaine pointed out, you can invest in all different type of properties, but location is one of the factors that guarantee you return. Because certain location will guarantee a certain amount of return, while another location, it may be years upon years before you reach the appreciation that another location appreciated in a year. So when you are investing, these are things that you have to consider. And that's why we always advise persons to seek professional advice, because a lot of times persons will go ahead, make decisions, and then with the returns that they're looking for cannot be materialized in that location, that time frame. So that is when they have issues, because they would have made an investment, but they were not prudent in the investment, so the returns that they were looking for did not come through.
Right. And you want to look at the potential. Jermaine covered it though. The other thing about borrowing is that if you have a high, you've borrowed a lot. So suppose you borrow like 90%. So debt to equity ratio is high. It will give you good returns if it's working for you. But then if something goes wrong, it also magnifies your losses. So you want to do your calculations. You want to look at your best possible scenario, the neutral one, and the worst case scenario, and don't plan on the best possible scenario. We look at the probabilities of all of them, We sit down and we run those calculations and give you an idea, and then give you a guide as to when to get out of the market, switch what you're investing and so on. So it's not just, I'm going to buy a house and do it as an Airbnb, just like that. You have to sit and be purposeful and sit with a professional for them to guide you through it.
And I just add this last bit before we move from this question. Please remember, when you're on the purchasing end and you're going into real estate, you're going to pay about 6% thereabout in additional fees, taxes, closing costs, and so on and so on. And when you're selling, you're going to pay about 11%. So look at those percentage. And sometimes when you're ready to sell the property, when you're to flip the property, you wouldn't have a 15% appreciation in value. So you're in a negative position.
Okay, Tammy, your second question, if you are satisfied with those responses. Tamikia? Okay, I hope we didn't lose her. Okay, let me unmute her. Tammy?
Okay, thank you. I was having a challenge unmuting. Yes, I'm satisfied, but I noticed nobody touched about the commercial properties, if those are good or bad investment.
Oh, I did. Well, we'll talk about the. All right, sorry. Well, let me go ahead. We'll talk about the net operating income. So you're basically looking at your income and the expenses of getting that income, like your tax liabilities and so on. And then can it command a good rent? What is the potential vacancy for that particular area? So and the type of tenants that you're going to attract. So in some areas, let's say your tenants are going to be restaurants. Some restaurants have a high turnover. And it's only restaurants it's suitable for. You're putting yourself in a more precarious position because your vacancy you might have higher vacancy rates compared to something else that's more secure. So it really depends. And what we're trained to do as valuation surveyors is to do the analysis in depth and give you the different scenarios and tell you the possible mix of properties to put. So we can't just say this is the best thing, because it really, really, really depends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me give her a little trick before she move on. Tyrell, you see, for commercial properties, you don't necessarily, if you're clever, you don't have to purchase the fee simple interest, which is a freehold interest as we call it, because you could lease that property, renovate the property, and you sublet that property if the lease agreement allows you to do that. So you would put that in your negotiation when you're getting the head lease, right? Mm-hmm. And Andrew, pay close attention to Andrew's comment about location and the type of returns for each location.
Okay. Yeah, I get this feeling, Tamika and Tapanas, that life is like a Monopoly game, that each place you land will either put you in jail or you'll put you in a place of profitability. So I think in looking at that, you need somebody outside of the real estate circle, somebody who, like an investment advisor, a life coach, can look at your dreams, your plans, sketch a map for you, and look at where you want to go and where each move will take you. And that you're not to buy a liability, but to buy assets and to grow. So I would approach it from that in a total, somebody who can look way down the road and help you to reach that goal.
But the actual calculations, Brother Tyrell, the actual calculations from a property perspective, we are trained to do it, not just a banker, because some of the bankers don't know some of the little nuances in land. So get us with your financial advisor to help you.
So the financial advisor creates a roadmap, and then you guys fill in the details. And then, but Jermaine didn't mention student loan. I noticed he said 6 months and so, but Tamika, we know the reality of student loans, so I know why she would ask such a question, you know. It's going to take a while. Go ahead, Tamika, with the second question. Okay, she's there. Yes, Tammy?
Okay, thank you. I was having a problem unmuting again. Okay, the second one is relates to the real estate market and the regulating of the prices. Are those prices value for money, or is that price gouging?
It's Beale. Dr. Beale, you take that one.
Dr. Beale, this is at your level.
Dr. Beale is very vocal at this topic, you know. Take that one.
How do you control it? Because it seems to be getting out of control.
All right. We're operating in a free market, so you don't control it, right? You don't control it. Price is determined by demand and supply, but Dr. Beale is the guru in this area. You take over, Dr. Beale.
So that means that the scammers and the diaspora in England are going to eat up all of the property then, and the young persons won't get any.
I don't want to say that's a possibility, but the reality is that if the market is free of controls, then it's basically who can put in the best foot will be the one who will get the property or the properties. Now, you raised an important point, and Jermaine is used to me, if you want to say, elaborating on this, because apart from being a valuer, I see where there are instances where there is a need for some amount of control, even though that would be typically going against what you'd expect to see in a typical market. For the simple point that what Tamika raised is basically saying that if it is we allow persons to be, well, essentially who has the money to be able to be putting in for these properties, more or less those who are less fortunate or not as economically well off, they basically won't get up. Well, it's less likely for them to have an opportunity to own a piece of the rock. So from a more welfare perspective, I can understand where her question is coming from as a young person who wants to own property or wants to invest in property in some way, shape, or form. What I would also encourage young persons to do is, in order to build up their wealth, in order to come to a point where they can actually own a piece of the rock, there are other ways of investing in real estate as opposed to tangible real estate assets. There are intangible real estate assets. So, for example, REITs or even stocks backed by real estate properties. You can invest in those. And I mean, to purchase stocks, you only need $10,000. And if it's something that you are willing to do on a monthly basis, then you can purchase those stocks. You have illiquid assets that are backed by real estate, actually tangible real estate assets, where you can get rates as high as 25%, 33% per year. And then that can help you to reach your goal towards actually finding that 10% deposit money or purchasing multiple properties over a period of, say, 20, 30 years and clearing off your mortgage in quick time. So that's another way in which you can invest in real estate to actually get you onto the market as how it's currently structured. And stocks is a good way in which you can do that. So that's what I encourage persons to do.
Yeah, let me add to that. There is some amount of control though, Tamika, where so you have in any state you have two types of developers. So you have private developers and then you have the state, which is government, right? In Jamaica more so we have NHT to a larger extent. You have HHT and such. In NHT schemes, which the government has put in their manifesto that they're putting out X amount of houses over this term, they are primarily for first-time homeowners. So there is some level of control. The disadvantage is that NHT would put the schemes where lands are available, which are not necessarily where young people want to live. Mm-hmm. So that is the disadvantage. So, but there are some amount there, and more houses NHT roll out, that would control the market as you talk about market control, because the supply side would increase, and if supply increase to where we have there's a balance between demand and supply, you should see a leveling off of house prices, and such.
Yeah, third and final, and then Chris had some questions after Tamika that he wants to get out. Tamika?
Okay. All right, the final one has to do with urban and regional planning. Maybe I'm being fair enough, but in terms of the approval of development, are there approvals given with consideration for the surrounding city, community, or town, so that the infrastructure is not burdened, there is no disruption or displacement, the necessary infrastructure, whether it be road, water, and all of that, are in place and won't be disrupted. So I wanted to understand if the developments have to get this type of approval with these conditionalities met before they go ahead.
Who wants to take that one?
Yes, we're not all, well, I'm doing planning, but I'm just getting into planning. But yes, theoretically, that's what happens. And it does happen in practice in that there's a broader, they have development orders for the different parishes. And then each development has to go through an approval process. Even just a basic subdivision of land has to go through a formal process that involves sending these documents to different ministries, so Ministry of Health. I think for buildings, it has to go to the fire department. In some cases, if you're going to have an environmental impact, you're required to do an environmental impact assessment, and it's something that you're required to get public input on. If you go on DEPA's website, you'll actually see a lot of documents that tells you what has been submitted for approval, what has been approved, what has been sent back for other documentation. And you'll see that they have some that are out for public opinion and public comment. It's just that a lot of the times we don't know that these things are happening, so we're not participating in the process, but there's a structure for that to happen.
All right.
What I would say, Tamika, you see the developments you see going up now, those have been in planning for years before now. It's not a quick process. It's not like they just submit the plans last month and they get void this month. So as Rochelle said, they would have gone through all the different agencies, all the different ministries that are part and parcel of this development and sustainable development process and get the approvals. So it's a very lengthy process.
I asked because in terms of infrastructure like roads, sometimes there's a traffic, the road network is not enough, it's not big enough or well planned out or enough to manage the extra flow of traffic. Sometimes there's disruption in water supply. That's the reason I asked.
Okay, thank you, Tamika. All right, Chris, before you come in, let me just get one more question out. Sophia Terrelong. Sophia?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so 2 questions, but they're related. It's the same person, Barista Gordon. What rates do you see realtors charging buyers as their fees? Just the range, because I know, you may not be able to, well, you can't speak about specifics, but what rates, percentage rates are you seeing realtors charging buyers as their fees? That's the first question. I don't know if you want me to split it.
Yes. Okay, who wants to take that?
Oh, I was referring to Gordon.
Does that Tom?
I don't know how to answer that one, but what I can tell you right now for the vendor is charged typically 5%, and sometimes that 5% is split down the middle, 2.5, 2.5, where you have a buyer's commission and you have a seller's commission, and you could be guided by that same split if you are representing the purchaser. I don't know, it is really up for debate.
No, I'm referring to the case where she mentioned that she has seen where realtors have charged buyers.
Okay.
It was a personal agreement, which is what I'm saying to it. Wasn't even in the agreement. So I think that was a personal agreement. It's not the norm. I want you to disabuse yourself of the idea that it's the norm. It's not the norm.
So it wasn't on the sales agreement?
No.
Okay. The second question, still you, Barista Gordon. Would acquiring all real estate as joint tenancy protect wives against illicit children, such as those born from a husband's infidelities?
If it protects them against...
Okay then, here's the thing. Women tend to outlive men in general. So in the event, and they're purchasing a lot of real estate together, would purchasing the real estate as joint tenancy provide protection for the wife? And
I don't think it comes to protection. The fact of the matter is that if it is that you're a joint tenant, then because of the right of survivorship, when the other joint tenant passes, the other person takes, the joint tenant takes, because they're 100% owner as well. So the fact that you would have owned the property at the end of the day, if the male passes first, then if, for example, the husband passes first, then the wife would be able to determine what to do with the property. But suppose the wife passes first, then the husband determines what to do with the property because he would take the property. So it will only provide protection, in your words, if the husband dies first.
Okay, so basically it would be best to do the estate planning just to make sure that everything is sorted, especially once, like I said, illicit children or children
And
that.
yes, and first of all, I'd answer yes to that question. But my other part of it, and this might get me in a little trouble, but the other part of it is a child is a child. They never chose how they came into the world. And so the fact of the matter is that for us to suggest that a father should not take care of the child.
No, I'm not saying that. How would you share it? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm not talking about a child who predates a marriage.
No, but I'm not talking about a child who predates marriage either. I'm saying even if that child
but say, for example,
the marriage, the child is still entitled to be cared for.
Yes, okay, fine. Not debating that. What I'm saying is that you have two persons, man, woman, and they're both financially buoyant and they're purchasing stuff together. Yes. Seeing that that child does not belong to the female then or the wife, I understand if that child has an equal share of the father's properties. Or only the value of the properties.
Only if he doesn't leave a will. So if that father does not, okay, so two scenarios. If it is that the wife dies first and you are joint tenants, the husband will get the property and the wife cannot tell the husband what he can do with the property because he is owner. So if the wife dies first and the husband takes the property, he can leave it to anybody who he wants to leave it to. That's the first scenario. If it is that, you know, yeah, and that's really it actually in this situation. So it only provides protection if the husband, and I use the word protection very guardedly because I don't like that word in this scenario. I would say it only disentitles the child if the husband dies first. And because the husband will die first, it means that it would become the wife's property.
So in cases where you have those, by the way, I'm single, not married, just thinking down the line, I'm weird. I like to.
No, but that's fine. But I'm just saying, any child must be taken care of.
Have the estate planning once, like, well, in general for children, but especially once you have, I guess, outside children coming into play, just to avoid any problems, like the case where we had the lady being shut up in church. That's where those thoughts have sprung from, honestly, for me, from that.
My understanding is that it was not, in fact, I don't know if that was an outside child or that was a child before. So, I mean, there is that. I didn't get into things like the Inheritance Act and that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is that even if you leave a will and you have a child that is born outside of marriage, whether before the marriage or during the marriage, and the child is somehow dependent on you and you leave nothing in the will for that child, they can still apply for something under the
they'll get a share.
You know, so for me, to broaden the response to your question, I hope I answered the legal part of your question.
Yes.
That the legal part of your question is answered?
Yes.
But what I would suggest, even for a male, and we know that it's not right. That's not the issue that we're discussing here. We're not discussing whether it's right. We're discussing the fact that it would have already happened. And I've seen it happen too. So I'm saying what I would suggest in a situation like that is that the father actually prepare a will, yes, and leave something for all the children, both in and out. I believe that is a proper.
That would be a case of having two, kind of splitting the property then between the mother and the father. Because
it would not apply
here
to the
on
joint
common.
tenancies. Huh?
It's because the assets now would have to be split down the line because you're considering that the other child or the outside child now, you would have the same number of years on each side, because let's assume that the lady only has children within her marriage, and then the man has extra children. So then it would be a case of the wife having her will and the husband having his will.
Yeah, so what we do when we're writing, for example, a will where persons are joint tenants, we actually sort of make it conditional. So we say, for example, in the event that my wife predeceases me, I will leave the property to so and so, and the property becomes, I leave the property to so and so and so.
Okay. All right,
Thank you, Dr. Terry Long, for bringing the sauce, the hot pepper sauce. Saucy questions. Christopher, you had some questions you want the panel. We have about 10 minutes of their time. I beg them, please. I know the Saturday pea soup is ready.
Why am not going to pressure you guys, you know? Nicole, you want a little break and then ask Jermaine a question? I don't know.
I wanted to add something. I don't know why the computer froze just now, but I wanted to add something to Sophia's inquiry about the joint tenancy. I know she was specific to her about the will, but in the event that there's nobody dies and that outside child caused a divorce, the other party or both parties best be in a position to buy out the other half of the property, or the whole property would have to be sold and the equity is shared equally. So there's a lot of problems that can happen before the death.
All right. Nicole, who pays? I hear you talking about the executor fee. Who pays that fee, and how do they get paid?
No, it comes out of the estate. So
who pays them? Who they take it themselves? They pay themselves, or?
Oh, yeah. But the executor has a responsibility to account to the beneficiaries. So it's even stated clearly, because the executor, when we make that application to court, they sign an oath, and the oath actually speaks to being able to sort of faithfully dispense their responsibilities, one, and two, whenever called upon to do so, to essentially provide a true account of the estate. So they have a responsibility to provide an account of the estate. As a matter of fact, the act is called the Trustees, Attorneys, and Executors Act. That governs what it is that they do. So an executor has a very sort of specific legal responsibility. So it's not like them can decide to take 10% and the beneficiaries sit down and, you understand, look on. They can take them to court.
So hold on. If you have two executors, but also I ask some question. If you have two executors, right? I saw a question on the chat, and they were asking, two executors, do they get 12% or both of them?
No, the law is very clear about that. This legislation in section 5, the legislation says that if there is more than one executor or administrator or trustee, the commission shall be divided equally between whoever is ready to act in the capacity of executor. So the law is clear. It's split equally.
So can an executor be held liable for debts like surpassing the deceased liability that exceeds his assets? Is he liable for?
He personally liable? Not that I know of. I don't know of that being part of our law. No.
Okay. The question is, throw it out to you guys. What type of market what type of market you see right now, occurring right now in this pandemic? Anyone can? You guys, I would like to hear each person's opinion.
I think the millers
I'm not asking for any long thing, you know. Buyers are sellers market. What do you think?
Still a buyer's
All
market.
right.
Well,
Well, a
Jermaine, you
seller's
said
market.
something.
Sorry, still a seller's market. Sorry.
So, all right, and I'll go with
Why,
Jermaine on this
Andrew,
one.
I forgive a speech, you know.
Yeah, I'll go with Jermaine on this one. But as Jermaine pointed out earlier, what you can have sub-market existing in market.
Yeah.
So it's not one market that exists, because again, it depends on where you're looking at. So you can have sub-market existing in market.
Existing,
but,
man.
But
generally in the residential sector.
Yes.
Defining the
But
sellers.
It's a seller based on the characteristics of a seller's market. It's basically what we're looking at is a seller's market. That's all.
All right.
Can I
go ahead, Rochelle, and then I'll come in after. Go ahead.
Can I put something in there and say that I'm maybe on the fence, because I'm thinking that if we segment the market at the top of the market, it might be considered a buyer's market. So when you have those really high-end properties where nobody really buying them, if somebody comes and put in an offer for one of those $120 million properties, the seller is going to be willing to negotiate, and then you have the power. So I would argue that there's some segmentation.
So you see on the you will see on the top end market.
Yeah, the top.
Those properties are normally sold before it's out, you know.
The top end, no. What you find is that people switch when their incomes can manage up there to the next segment. So they're on the market languishing.
Let me share a bit of statistics in the market right now. So if you do, everybody has access to the MLS. So you can go to VMPSrealestate.com and that will take you to the MLS. Or you can go on to any other broker's website and that will take you to the MLS. If you put in a price range that is a threshold of 15 million, you're hardly going to find any property, any market in the country.
No,
doesn't matter which number you're hardly going to find it. You're going to see everything under offer, under contract. Cool. Right?
Yeah, when I'm talking about properties going before this place, I'm talking about apartments. Those things.
No, man, no. But follow
different.
But right now, the supply side of apartments in Kingston is almost leveling off with demand. If you have 30 to 40 million to spend, you can pick, choose, and refuse which apartment you can buy in Kingston, two-bedroom apartment, right? Now, your choice will be location, the types of amenities and such. So you find that the products in that price range are very good because developers has to be, they are now in a position where they have to win the customer, the purchaser, by putting in nice finishes and fixtures and such. The other day I went into an apartment and the ceiling fans had Bluetooth connectivity and some things that I've never seen. I'm like,
in Jamaica,
they're working for the dollar because so many developments came on stream in that price bracket, 30 to 40 million. And what you have now is that the pandemic has delayed some of those projects, the timeline. So the delivering or the completion of those complexes are clashing. They would generally space them out so people, this one could finish sell before this one and that one and such. But we have a clash now. So if you have 30 to 40 million to spend for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment in Kingston right now, you can pick, choose, and refuse. And it's on the MLS. You can use that as a figure, as a testing ground. As Rochelle mentioned earlier, the high-end properties now, which are, I would say, above 80 million, those properties might be on the fence where you have a seller, what we call it?
Buyer's market.
On the fence, buyerish.
But that segment of the market is not that big. So that is that it's not that big.
Yeah.
Most people who are participating in that market, this is not their first home. So
and it's maybe not a home either. Some of them is investment.
So that is not their first property.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Most time I'm spending 80 million, that's not his first property.
Agreed. But Jermaine, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So where's the money coming from for this high demand for the 34 million?
But I tell you, 30 million is not so far-fetched as you may look at it.
An apartment.
Jermaine, I'm not talking probably for anybody here. I'm talking about the average Jamaica.
Hold me this. I will reiterate the loan term and the interest rates. This is what is causing affordability. So lower, if we should have a shift, if we should go back to double-digit interest rates, you see what Andrew pointed out to.
Then a lot of them couldn't get by these
expectations of a pandemic. We would have foreclosure like crazy.
But here the problem now,
but
Jermaine,
then
we're still at the...
Go ahead. Jermaine, if you lower the interest rate, right, and you lengthen the loan term, which is what a lot of the financial institutions are doing, in the long run, the people are actually poorer without actually, so they're actually paying less monthly, yes, than they probably would have paid probably 4 years ago for that same $30-40 million apartment. But if we sit down and calculate up the money that you're going to spend on that mortgage, it's a notable difference. Had it been that you have an interest rate that's 2%, 3% higher than what we have now.
You're better able to comment on that part because you are a neutral person. I am a part banker. I am going to say, take the loan, and pay it for the full duration of the loan because I'm looking at the opportunity cost of money. Instead of using your lump sum, you pay me in increments and you use your lump sum to put on investments, stocks and bonds and such and get greater returns on that side. That is how I'm going to speak because of my banking background. But you're better able to comment on that.
I just normally tell people to weigh the options and, they should think in the long term what it is they want to achieve for themselves in terms of the wealth and financial management, and then choose a property that helps them to achieve that.
Yeah, man. You see, Rochelle would recommend that we break away from the norm of running into I would tell people to break away from the norm of trying to pay off your property, paying off your mortgage quick.
Because why would you do that, Jermaine?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Why would you do that?
Let me explain. Let me explain. We should let our assets work for us.
But realistically, I agree. And probably 3% per year, Jermaine.
Exactly. And our market is not as responsive.
Right now, Dr. Beale, if you have a property right now and you have a 10 million loan on it and that property is valued 30 million, why not access the equity in that property to do greater stuff?
No, I wouldn't do that because then I'd be looking about my finances in the long term and what I want to achieve.
And it's also
once you do the right things now, your finances can improve in the long term, which is why I think a lot of people take it now. Because what I see, for example, is that couples will come, they put together the funds because they have a longer term loan. As Jermaine said, because the interest rates are low, they can actually pool together. What they tend to do, for example, is that they will buy a property where, say, for example, they can rent out the back part. And so in their minds, what they do, they have it and they can, suppose the mortgage is 120, 130. They will rent out the back for about 40. They're buying something that they know that they can rent out a bit of it for about 40. That immediately puts their mortgage down to something that is more manageable and closer to actually a less expensive property. Because they're now down to $80,000. And when you do it that way, and then they're saying to themselves, I'm not going to stay at this income for the next 20 years. So my income is supposed to increase. And so that $80,000 becomes a smaller percentage, over time. That will work for, I think, a middle income, purchase market value property. So that actually that 30 to 40 does work for that 30 to 40. But for the 80, somebody who is buying like an $80 million property, their profile is completely different. So we're really not talking about that person. But it can work, for example, for the couple buying a $30-40 million, a middle income couple. It can actually work, especially if they look at, okay, what can I do with this property to help it to generate something as I am moving forward. So, I mean, when you're thinking about purchasing your properties, I would suggest that that's something that you think about as well. You're going to spread out in all of it, or you can take a little piece and decide, say, you know, you can rent it out, you reduce the mortgage, make sure that you're able to pay the mortgage if you don't have a tenant, and you know that you're going to take a little squeeze. So you ensure that you keep that in mind.
And that's,
or if one partner loses their job, ensure that you can still pay the mortgage.
There are certain benefits of a mortgage. There's a lot of benefits, you know. But
I think so too.
Given the delinquency of a lot of us, a mortgage will keep your property insured, force you to keep your property.
True.
A lot of people pay off their property, they stop insuring the property, you know, and they have exposed themselves to risk.
That's true.
And I tell you this bit again: when you have paid your mortgage to a certain point, and the financial institution call you and say, "Hi, Dr. Beale, I will give you a home equity home equity loan, or I'll give you a loan to renovate the house," or they're just trying to keep you on the books. They're trying to keep you on the books as long as possible, because when a financial institution is budgeting to grow their asset portfolio in mortgages, so they're growing their portfolio. So they say, we want to grow the portfolio by $1 billion, right? They have to increase business by $2 billion, because $1 billion will be coming off the books, and they didn't want that. So they have to plan on keeping you on the books and then grow it by another $1 billion.
Right, Jermaine. So that's why I'm saying, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying be purposeful in what you're doing. So it's not to discourage you from purchasing, but look at all the elements and try to be So I think somebody says an apartment, you can't rent a section of the apartment.
Yeah,
all right.
there was a question about the 30-40 million apartment. Why buy an apartment for 30 million when you can't expand on it?
You can't do anything to it.
All right, folks. The panelists have gotten away, galloped over the pasture. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. We have Shelly-Ann and then Cheryl again. Shelly-Ann Thompson. Shelly-Ann?
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
First of all, thank you, Terrell, for this awesome, really awesome meet. Really enjoying it, and I've learned so much thus far. I have 2 questions. So the first question is for Mrs. Gordon. I want to know, is a will valid without an executor?
If it is that, you can do a letters of what I call letters of administration with the will attached. So a will can be valid without an executor. Suppose you put the 2 executors in there and both have died, you can still prove the will. It's just that the administrator will be different. It wouldn't be the executor. But you do need to put the executor in the will.
Okay, so if a will was written and there's no executor, that means it's not a will then? That's what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying, because there are other things that determine the validity of a will. Whether or not you have an executor is not one of the items that actually determines the validity of it.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. My next question is for Mr. Jermaine. I want to find out, for those $30-40 million, what the salary has to be. I'm not even going to ask regarding the $80 million apartment, because I'm getting a headache just thinking about an apartment being sold in Jamaica for $80 million. For the $30 million apartment, what the salary has to look like?
Well,
or you need to be a business person?
No, man, no.
You have to have Jermaine's salary.
You and
plus
your
him DJ on the side.
You and your partner.
Well, the Lord has not blessed me yet with a partner. I'm a single person.
So it's easy to do. It's easier to do with a co-applicant, right?
Okay, so you're basically saying I can't afford an apartment because I'm single.
I'm not saying that. But if you are bringing in a net salary of, let's say, 350 to 400,000.
Net. Okay, so a net salary.
Yes, I'm 350 to 400.
Okay, let us be serious here. So a net salary, a net monthly a net monthly salary of $350,000 to $400,000 can get me the $30 million apartment.
You're in the ball game, man. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I guess I would have to be the prime minister. Thank you.
Listen,
no. The prime minister hardly gets $10 million.
I explained to young people that please do not have that mindset to say that this is impossible. It's not impossible. You can get there.
And you're saying next.
And I'm not saying I am there.
All right, but panelists, how would you dispel this myth that is pure scammers and drug people by these places? What would you say to that?
I can tell you that, and Andrew would be able to tell you this as well, because we are valuers and we interact with the buyers. We have seen hardworking Jamaicans investing in these properties. Legit
Anti-money laundering act.
I tell you, there is a very strict poker requirement for real estate in Jamaica, where purchasers and vendors have to submit all their information that will be checked. There's proper reporting to FID. It is not as easy as people. You cannot just turn up and buy a property $30 million cash. You're looking for a quick prison time.
Then, Mr. Jermaine, maybe you should suggest then the type of jobs that pay the $350 net, so we can switch careers.
No, I'm just saying that you just have to be the best at what you do, whichever field you are in. In every field, there are people who make it big. So you just have to be the best at what you are.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Beale.
Some government jobs that pay that amount of money, though.
Yeah,
There are some government jobs. I mean, lecturers make that amount.
Where?
I'm not these lecturers.
There are people at your organization.
One position.
Can I just add one thing before we move on? That I know we're always advocating for low income housing and poor people and all of this and such, and there's nothing wrong with that. But some of these developments are not designed for low income and poor people to live there.
They're not.
It is very expensive to live. You see it looking good and all, but as a rule of thumb, if you see an apartment complex with a pool, prepare to pay $20,000 to $25,000 for maintenance per month. Just prepare yourself for that. That is just this maintenance. While you can hurry up and pay off your mortgage, you cannot hurry up and pay off your maintenance.
Or an elevator, Jermaine.
Yeah, elevator. Just prepare yourself over $20,000 per month, whether you're there or not, whether you use it or not.
Whether it's rented or not.
Well, Cheryl is gonna tell us where the money coming from. Cheryl, come in, Cheryl. Lim.
Okay, hi everybody. This is such an engaging, fun webinar. I can't recall being on a webinar for 3 hours. It's like a marathon. I can't come off. I just stepped away like for 20 minutes to have dinner with my family, and I want to say you guys are just wonderful, superb panel and discussion. I want to touch on the issue that Jermaine repeated several times regarding the trend. And we know for the urban area, it's definitely apartments. And I concur with him. With a lot of clients will ask, who are buying these properties? But and I want to throw something into the mix for the listeners, that oftentimes people who start out with a stepping stone and, like Jermaine said, invested, started out in Portmore, bought the property at 10 million, it's now worth 25 million, they sell it and they move to Kingston. It's not so difficult. And I tell my clients over and over again, don't start out with your dream house like Jermaine says. Start out with anything you can afford. Now, the way how Jamaican real estate appreciate, it will just be a pleasant surprise to wake up one morning and realize you didn't even know that your property was valued that much in any decent community. So that's part of what I'm leading to know in terms of the whole apartment ownership. And we as realtors are noticing a continuous trend. 10 years ago, apartments were built, still high price. I mean, it's relative to every year that we're in the market, with 2 bedrooms, 1 apartment. 3-bedroom, one parking space. That's what I'm referring to. The development, how regulated or unregulated it is in terms of either UDC, NEPA, and KCC, asking clients to pay $30-40 million for a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom apartment. And we know typically when you talk about co-ownership for these $30 million apartments, where is the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the husband or the co-person is gonna park? So we talk about property values, but sometimes I don't get the sense that it's being properly supervised and regulated in terms of the strata living. You're gonna ask me to pay $25,000 a month. I only have one parking space. We don't have drying yards anymore. So when Jermaine, quite said so well, the cost is so involved. Because your electricity bill in an apartment is twice that of any bungalow, because you don't have drying yard. Everything is a washer dryer in unit sort of a situation, and what I'm concerned about is if the proper infrastructure is not put in place, and I'm sure any member of the panel can respond to what my concern. You will have to be very careful that these stratas, if they're not properly handed over, if they're not properly managed, if they don't have the right kind of facilities to maintain that kind of motivation for clients to continue to pay, that we might end up in a situation where apartments start to deteriorate in terms of standard, So I don't know if Mr. Moffat, is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes,
Moffat?
yes.
If you could speak to what is being done, or if Jermaine can shed any light on it in terms of the standards of the apartments, the allocation of parking spaces to each unit, and other, decent livable arrangements.
What I can say, Cheryl, is that the development order speaks specifically to these things, how much parking per square foot or per room and such. As to if it is adhered to, I cannot comment on that.
Yeah, we can't control that aspect. The agencies, it's the state in order, and they should abide by it.
That's more on the planning side.
Yeah, the plan.
Sometimes what is approved is not what is built.
Wow.
Well, we have 2 minutes to go. Valid question. My concern, though, is the poor people, the lower to mid to lower income market, the teachers, hardworking teachers, and things out there. Are the NHT funds being used expeditiously to provide for them? Because yes, we can combine the thing, but when you combine it, can you really find the property?
I think it has to be creative, and it has to come from the top level of government. Because, for example, all of us are gravitating to Kingston and St. Andrew because of the jobs. But if you could decentralize that and spread out these top-paying jobs across the island, you already solve your land supply problems. And then you're better able now to provide housing for persons on the lower end. But because we're all concentrated in the urban area, that demand is pushing prices way up above what the average Jamaican can really afford to cover.
But the UDC can play a role in that, though. Yes, I think the Urban Development Corporation, in terms of putting in the infrastructure in place across the island,
Mr.
development is dispersed equitably across the island.
Wow.
I am the manager of the Jamaica Conference Center.
Mr. Morgan.
Currently. So Mr. Moffat can respond.
I think the HAJ, there's HAJ as well, remember?
No, but it has to come from higher up, because if all of the top,
there's a gravitational pull to Kingston.
There's one.
What we can hope for as a result of this pandemic, Andrew didn't tap it in his slide, is that remote work will become a norm. And if remote work is a part of the
new norm,
then it doesn't matter where you live.
It doesn't matter.
True.
That's how maybe the highway.
I see people right now who are migrating and keeping their jobs in Jamaica.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Persons overseas still working in Jamaica.
Yeah, true.
Well, we said the magic word and Mr. Courtney Sams shows up. Mr. Sams, Mr. Sams? Courtney Sams? Please go ahead, sir. Mr. Sams, I see your hands are up, sir.
Go
Don't be
ahead,
shy.
Mr. Sams. You're clear.
I don't know why he's shy. You know.
Hold on there.
Mr. Sams, would you wish to have a comment, sir?
Yes, he's up now. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good evening, panel. Good evening, everyone else. Two things I want to comment on. One, with respect to the lady who mentioned about the parking space. With regard to that, it's kind of a trade-off. With each additional parking space, what that would do is reduce the amount of buildable space to the developer, and it would force them to provide additional parking space by some other means, whether by developing a parking lot, and that would drive up the cost of the unit to the purchaser. So it really is a trade-off. For each additional space, purchaser would need to be prepared to pay more for that unit that they would normally pay now. So they have to be mindful of that. And secondly, as it relates to the role of the UDC, yes, I agree. The UDC does have a role to play, but I think we perhaps need to be more scientific about it in terms of utilizing the statistics that are available to us in terms of the growth areas within the country. I think one of the reasons for the intensification of housing units within the corporate area is really just to keep the cost down to persons now, because infrastructure works is not cheap, and so what they seek to do is to utilize existing infrastructure and reduce the overall cost to developers. And also.
Courtney, can I just respond to that point where you just raised a while ago? Maybe what the UDC should lobby for is to let the government put in something like a community infrastructure levy, where the developers pay that tax when they want to do development, and the tax that they would pay goes into a pool where the UDC can then draw on that as a reserve to then put in the infrastructure works that's necessary. I mean, other countries.
I would add something simpler than that, Miss Dr. Beale.
Okay.
Because when the idea of the highways was sold to us, it was said that these highways would unlock access to idle lands. And right now, when I'm on the highways, I'm driving past these idle lands and cannot get to them. So if we had more exit points and entrance points from the highway, there would be a lot more. The supply and where people could live. I'll give you an example. St. Jago Hills. The north-south highway.
Very good example. Literally pass over it. It's
right?
True.
And that community is suffering because of poor access. Right?
True.
So the highways are used to link towns and not opening access to idle lands, and that concept is just not right.
I agree with you, Jermaine. Some level of land value capture should really, and Ms. Beale should really come into play there, and open up some of these areas to more development. And particularly since you have the highway along that route, it may be even more fruitful if we, set up our infrastructure in such a way that we benefit from it.
Yeah.
Just a disclaimer, Mr. Sams is estate manager acting at the UDC, but none of these folks are here in their professional capacity. So let me drop that there. So y'all don't, I don't get in trouble with anyone. We are here in our personal capacity, giving our opinions. And this is Heart to Heart Talk Show, predominantly Christian based production that examines issues of faith, family, finances. So we're looking at the context of real estate, owning it, protecting it, maximizing it. And we have heard very incisive presentations from our panelists, and my co-host Christopher Moffat is going to give his rap thoughts. He is the host of, and his wife, of Mixing with the Moffats. Follow them on YouTube. Yes, so we have had presentations from the Millers, Rochelle and Andrew Miller, experts in the real estate market. We have heard from Dr. Tina Beale, program leader at UTEC, expert in that field. We have heard from Jermaine Williamson, senior valuer of Realtor at Victoria Mutual Property Services, and so many other things. If you want a wedding DJ, he's the man to play the sound and to mix for you. He's also into flipping properties and helping you to get properties like the ones behind him. And so many other things. Nicole Gordon, attorney at law. Everything that you need is here, and we have realtors on board here. We have heard contributions from them. Christopher Moffat, senior estate officer at the UDC, but he's here in his personal capacity. So your thoughts, Moffat, as you wrap, and just wrap your thoughts with the folks who are in the middle to lower income and the diaspora, and they have listened to us and they say, they want to get in on this and they feel disenfranchised. What would be your parting thoughts?
All right. I am going to let you understand that never give up. There are ways and means of saving. As Miss Beale had spoke, she spoke about earlier regarding investing. Any small investment now, in the long run, you know how it turns out, right? Investment it's a risk, but it can be beneficial in the future. However, we are seeing a lot of new developments coming up that will take into consideration the lower to the lower middle end of our society. And if you just give it some time, be patient, right? Be patient, and in the meantime, while being patient, plan properly, and you will definitely reap the benefit and reduce any further loss of any income.
Yeah.
Definitely plan and save.
Yeah.
And it will come. It is there. It's coming up. I'm seeing them. Let's be open.
While you're doing a wrap, I would encourage everybody to pay close attention to HAJ's website. That is Housing Agency of Jamaica. Mm-hmm. Just check that website daily because they have some exciting products coming on the market for that income bracket.
Yeah, there is not only NHT that does development, HAJ does it as well for that income bracket. So guys, look out.
Yes, let me remind the folks as well, Chris, to pay your property tax due April 1, Tom Fool's Day. That sounds like Holy Thursday. What is supposed to happen Holy Thursday? We're supposed to leave half day on Friday. So
half day lockdown.
Yeah, so it's gonna be crazy.
You get up to the end of the month. That's what I'm hearing. So it is very important that these things go towards the infrastructure of these that are coming up, and
this is funded by your tax dollars.
Yes. So remember to pay it.
Yes.
It's a punch from the Mixing with the Moffats as well. The Moffats YouTube channel. Very nice.
And you can pay online, folks. So screenshot this and please pay it because your property. What's the implication of not paying your property tax? The government can take over your property.
The implications of not paying your property taxes is a penalty, a 10% penalty, and you can also be carried to court. So,
but can you lose a property? I think there's something there.
There is not that. I don't see that happening much regarding persons. It's over time that will happen, I guess.
Over time. Okay.
I think the penalty and the interest, those are key because that is going to be continuously going up once the grace period. So it's important to respect that part of the law. You understand?
Yeah. All right.
Guys,
30
don't
seconds.
give up.
Yeah, 30 seconds from each of the panelists before we go. Nicole?
Just a reminder what I spoke about, ensure that you plan for your estate. remember that the purchase price of a property is not what you pay for it. You always pay more. I think real estate is generally a good investment because our prices, they don't go back. And that's why I said Cheryl made some very important points. They tend to appreciate. And so if you can do it, you should really look for real estate as a good opportunity to invest. So
Yes.
thank you for listening and have a good evening.
Thank you, Nicole. Rochelle, then Andrew.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity for being here and to be a part of this panel. I must say, persons interested in going into real estate, as was said before, seek professional advice. I've seen over the years many persons that have gone into transactions and have not consulted with their attorney, have not consulted with their realtor, have not consulted with their valuer, and end up making mistakes. So seek professional advice, especially those who are looking for investment properties. So before you make the jump or the leap, assess the situation, speak to your professional, and they will guide you as to the best decision to make, at what time to make that decision to get the maximum return.
And I will just leave with you St. Luke 14, verse 28. For which of you intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it. Not a discouragement, but just an admonition to count the cost. You can make it, there is hope, but count the cost before you do anything.
Praise the Lord, Missionary Miller. All right, Dr. Beale.
Just adding on to that, don't give up, as Christopher indicated. Sometimes we just have to be innovative, a little bit strategic. Sometimes when we actually want to go for it, may not be the right time. And if we have proper guidance in terms of investment and financing, then you can jump over the hurdle and jump over it successfully more than once. So it's just for you to be strategic in how you go about achieving your goals.
Yeah, thank you. Jermaine Williamson.
All right, so I want to say a big thank you to Heart for having me. And it was an exciting panel. From I saw this compilation of talent, I know it would have been a very, very exciting discussion. I really enjoyed I've never been on I've done many webinars, so, and I've never been on any this long. And I feel like I would stay another hour. But and we don't have anywhere going, we could do it.
I have a prior meeting to go moderate. So.
Yeah, so I want to say also you can check out my Instagram page, DJ Will_LE Music. That is for our music side of things, and you see how excited I am at that part of life. Also, Will_Property Expert. That's Will_Property Expert for the real estate side of things. So you check out my Instagram pages for that. Home ownership or investing in property is attainable. It's not easy. Nothing in life is easy, because if it's easy, everybody would have done it. So you just have to sit down, make calculated decisions, get advice from the relevant people, explore all the options that are available. There was a time when people would say that they cannot get access to funds. People are not lending money, but the lending institutions are out there throwing money at people right now. Just be careful with what you do, and always have a valid pre-qualification letter, eligibility letter or pre-qualification letter. Keep that close to you. Always have that, because without that, you cannot make a move on a property. And I say that because I'm discouraging people from using cash to purchase. Use your cash otherwise. Your money should be working for you when you're sleeping. So we can have a whole other discussion on that. When Heart to Heart, book me again, because next time you can. But I'm happy to be here. And thanks to my panelists for the engaging conversations. Thanks to the organizers. Thanks to Mr. Moffat. Check out Mixing with the Moffats. It's very exciting. And that's it. I'm out.
Yes, I need you Christopher, to bring on Jermaine for him to do the eat the pepper challenge. Give him the ghost pepper, hottest pepper in the world. All right, so thank you folks on YouTube and Zoom. I'll get to some of your questions and I'll link you with the presenters if they're willing to share their presentations. I see you on. So God bless you as we end the live stream. I'll see you on Monday on the Heart to Heart Talk Show as we have a program called Things I Wish I Knew Before I Got Married. So I'm inviting back all my panelists, those who are not married, and those who are married to come on Monday 7:15 as we hear from couples, real life couples from Canada and Jamaica. And they're going to be very open, honest, and candid. I don't know if you're ready for them, but come on into the Zoom room, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, on Facebook, and also drop your email if you wish to be added to our MailChimp subscription. God bless you.